Good evening, Wilmington. This meeting is now called to order. This is the Finance and Economic Development Committee meeting for Monday, March 4th. I'm glad to see everyone. I'm the chair, Councilmember Chris Johnson from the 7th District. At this time, I will do a roll call for members of the committee here in person and also on Zoom. At this time, Vice Chair Harley is excused. Councilmember Bracy at large.
Present.
Councilmember Field, 8th District.
Present.
Councilmember Oliver is excused. Councilmember Spadola at large.
Present.
And Council President Congo. I believe I have him on Zoom. Okay, perfect. All right. As a friendly reminder, only members of the committee should be making motions and seconding. And again, we will take questions, of course, from members of the committee first, and then we will go to the other council members present, and then go to the public for public comment for each agenda item. Do we also have anybody else on Zoom, Marshall?
Yes, Councilwoman McCoy.
Okay, we have Councilmember McCoy present. Okay, 6th District, and again, if there's anyone else that comes on, just let Marshall know, and I can make sure you are acknowledged. All right, without further ado, I'm going to just jump right to the agenda with a lot of different matters to talk about. I'm going to go slightly out of order as there's a few items related, actually sponsored by Councilmember Darby. She's not here yet, so we will jump to the last item on the agenda, which is the review of the collective bargaining agreement between the City of Wilmington and American Federation of State, County, and Municipal Workers, AFSCME, and that is Local 1102B. And this is the crossing guard contract. Let me I don't believe the administration has anyone here to speak on that item, but I do believe there's a memo about that item. Is there? All right. All right. All right. Just as a quick run through with the 1102 contract, and again, this is just a review. Per law department's most recent interpretation, it did not need to be approved by council. So they asked me Local 1102B collective bargaining agreement, which has been ratified at this time. The contract term is from July 1st, 2023 to June 30th, 2026. The compensation scheme allows a one-time payment of $1,000 to crossing guards. For fiscal year 23 is an implementation of a 11-step pay plan that includes a 4% increase between steps. Fiscal year 24, there was a 0% adjustment, and fiscal year 25, a 0% adjustment. The union security clause is that there's some language eliminating requirement for service fees, and this is in compliance with current Supreme Court decision Janus versus AFSCME Council 31 from the U.S. Supreme Court. Those are, I believe, the only adjustments at this time for this contract. Are there any questions from members of council on this item? Councilmember Spadola.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to say this is the first union contract that we've had on a finance committee agenda since this council's been together, and I hope it's not the last. We should continue to review them. With labor being such a big part of the overall city budget, and a lot of that through union contracts. For us to have no say in union contracts, but be expected to vote on the budget is inconsistent. We should be able to have some voice, or at least some review of the union contracts. Even if by charter we don't have the ability to vote on them per se. But this is a good step in the right direction. Thank you.
Any other comments from members of council here in chambers? Any other comments by members on Zoom? All right. Now I'll turn over to public. Any public comments on the 1102 B contract? Seeing none. Again, this is not a ordinance, but is a review. Again, we thank the administration for sharing this information with us, and we hope that council continues to be involved in when we have these labor contracts that are being, put forward. So, thank you very much. All right. So now, without further ado, I'm going to move back up to the regular order of agenda. I do have Councilmember Darby recognized from the 2nd District. Good evening.
Good evening.
And I will, going back up to the top of the agenda, I'm going to give Councilmember Darby a minute. But we do have a resolution requesting a comprehensive assessment and impact of red light camera ticketing on the safety and equity of city residents. And this is a resolution. So, Councilmember Darby, when you're ready, I will turn over to you. to
Yeah, I
discuss
can
the speech.
start. Yes, so this resolution is about supporting a third-party assessment of safety and equity impacts of red light camera tickets in Wilmington by the end of this year. So this legislation really came from the community. So we had a few, when I say we, other community members who have stakeholder in fees and fines, our fees and fines national group, working group that we have, our fees and fines task force. We held a few community meetings, and we were going in to talk about parking tickets. But most of the conversation was around red light camera tickets, and we realized that there was an issue around people's understanding of the red light camera tickets, the equity impact of red light camera tickets, and if they actually do what they say that they do, which is reduce the number of red light people who run red lights, and if it then does not, or increase other types of accidents that may happen, like bumper accidents because someone is trying to avoid running a red light. So just a matter of like, is this really about safety? Is this about the city driving revenue through red light camera tickets? And then also another issue is that we know that for booting, the threshold is at 200, if I'm not mistaken. If you get one red light ticket for $110, and then if you're late, it goes up by a lot. You're close to that $200 limit. All they have to do is put a 2-hour, you don't have a residential sticker, on your car, and then you're booted the next day. So just thinking of those things and the impact of red light camera tickets and having to pay tickets and who the burden falls on in our city, which is usually on low income Black and brown communities, who stays in a cycle of poverty, as we know from our fees and fines working group, in regards to paying fees and fines, in regards to parking tickets, water fees and fines that we're going to talk about later tonight, and that. So that is the premise of the legislation. It's just talking about equity. It's talking about safety. It's just looking at it. It's having a third party come in and say, with fresh new set of eyes, right? So we know that we probably can get maybe someone from the finance department or audit department to do that. But for unbiased assessment about red light camera tickets, where we don't have the administration influence on that department or on that assessor, we're able to get a true understanding of red light cameras' impact on our constituents. So that's what this legislation is about. So I don't know if any of my colleagues have any questions about specifically the red light camera resolution and the importance of that.
Yes, Councilmember Darby. Thank you for presenting this. I guess my first question really is, we have a consultant who is, do we have a certain consultant in mind? Certainly, so we could at least know what the fiscal ask is. So as a council, we need to know whether it's $40,000, $50, it would be nice if we had somewhat idea of the price tag.
Yeah, so specifically for the red light camera one, I was not able to find a consultant yet for this. I know that well, no, that's not for this, it's for the water one. But for this one, I don't have an actual consultant for the third party assessment. That's something that could be looked into. But I wanted to make sure that why this is being brought up now is that we can find that in the next few weeks, but making sure it's a part of the budget conversation, because the budget, we're about to enter into that phase now. So being able to work on this between now and the next city council to identify who that third-party assessor should be. I have some people maybe in mind. They do water assessment, maybe they do red light camera assessment. I can reach out to them. That I have been talking to about water, but I don't have anyone specifically in mind. And I also know that I'm open to other council people who may know of any third-party assessors who may be able to do this assessment.
Very fair. All right, thank you very much. Any other questions from council members in chambers? I do have Council Member McCoy.
Oh,
See your
thank you.
hand up.
I had put my hand down, but
Oh.
thank you for acknowledging me. Oh, I was just, I did see the resolution and I saw the numbers. I was really astounded by the numbers at the two locations that she pointed out when it comes to where the red lights are and the amount of accidents and such. I guess trying to figure out what would be safer, having an accident or people running red lights is definitely something that probably should be looked into. Of course, we don't want people to run red lights, but we don't want to cause accidents either.
All right, now I'll turn it to public comment. Any comments from members of the public here in chamber? Good evening.
Thank you, Committee Chair Johnson and members of the City Council on the committee. I think this is a great piece of legislation. Wilmington gives out, I'm part of the fees and fines team with the Homes Campaign, which is a community-based group looking at promoting housing stability. But issues of fines and fees come up because being able to pay rent or housing costs is all about your overall budget, which is where the fines and fees issues comes in. And we're going to talk a little bit more about water billing later. But I just wanted to say I'm here to support and to urge all of you just to pass this, because it doesn't hurt to evaluate. You know, the city of Wilmington is a city of 70,000 people and gives out, over the last 5 years, has given out 80 to 100,000 tickets a year. And these tickets used to start out at 40. I want to thank you all for making it. Parking tickets start out at 25 for the first 14 days. But the tickets come in, it's $100 for a red light ticket. People don't always have the money to pay that $100. People don't even always know that they're running a red light ticket. There are over 40 locations in the city of Wilmington that have red light tickets. That's a lot for a city our size. Like, for example, New York City, I think there's 8 million people there, and they have, I think they have like 100 red light camera locations. Philadelphia, I think they have 2 million people, and they have 32 red light locations. So we have like a lot of red light cameras for a city our size. And people are paying a lot of money. And it's residents, you know, who are taking that money, and instead of paying for, you know, basic necessities like rent, medical, you know, costs, or even if they have extra money, taking that $100 and spending it like eating out in one of our local businesses, you know, we are taking that money and spending it on paying red light tickets. And the thing that I think we really need to look into as a city is that a lot of that red light ticket money goes to pay the contractor. So, you know, we think of it as a way to get revenue. It doesn't even generate as much revenue as we think. I think the whole system needs to be looked at and to see, like, does this make sense? Both from like an equity point, like who's being harmed by paying these tickets? Also by a safety point, like, is it having any kind of safety impact? And I think the idea of doing an evaluation and getting a third party to look at it is like a great idea. So I urge you all to like vote that out of committee tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else from the public? Public comments on this agenda item only?
Mr. Chair,
Councilmember McCoy, after public comment, we'll go back for second round.
okay.
Good evening. My name's James Dalkey. I live in the 7th District. So I wanted to speak on behalf of all of Shanae's resolutions and ordinances tonight. I would urge all of you to pass them. In regards to the red light tickets, as pointed out in the legislation itself, it seems that the safety of these certain intersections where we're seeing the most amount of tickets issued really isn't reducing the amount of crashes. So I think there's a question there from us as a city as well as red light tickets overall. Do they actually produce more public safety, or is it just a manner for the city to gain revenue? And in regards to that, I do feel that the city of Wilmington gets a large amount of money from fines and fees, not just red light tickets, but others. If you have not read it, I would urge all of you to read the Fines and Fee Collection and Enforcement in Wilmington, Delaware, Gains and Costs, a study done by the University of Delaware by Dr. Stephen Matro. In it, he points out that we bring in about, the red light ticket program brings in about equivalent of 4.4% of our general costs, which is absorbently high for a city of our size. And a lot of these fines and fees tend to be singled out on the lowest to moderate income members of our community, which, as Christian had pointed out earlier, kind of gets an economic ball rolling where, you know, if that then leads to instability with being able to pay rent or being able to pay your mortgage or being able to pay your water bill, or that's money that you could have spent in the local economy. Those are all things that I'd rather see that money go to than towards the red light enforcement. I will also speak from personal experience. I have worries about how the program is administered. Not only do we outsource this program, as well as I think the collection of all our parking fees to a third party that is a private company, but that company is not located here in Delaware, it's in New Jersey. So that's money coming out of our pockets, going to another state, not staying in our local economy. Also, it seems that the majority of the fines and fees collected go to pay that vendor. So really that vendor is just enriching themselves by, you know, convincing the city to put more red light ticket stops up, to increase parking enforcement so that they can get their bottom number up, right? It's not even raising revenue for us. I think having a consultant take a look at this program to devise a way that we can more equitably, you know, have fines more equitable across our city, but also to make sure that the funds raised from things are actually going back to services that help people in Wilmington is important. So, and if anyone needs a link to that study, please talk to me afterwards. I'd be happy to share it with you.
Thank you. All right, next member. Good evening.
Hi, my name is Cheyenne Miller, and I live in the 7th District over on the west side. I am the chair of the task force for fines and fees, and I also sit as a team member on the Fines and Fees Justice Team Committee, and this issue has come up a lot around what are we doing around the fines and fees related to red light tickets, both in the sense of people coming to us saying, can you help us? Can you help us find out like how I can get this ticket paid down? And people who have complained about booting because of the tickets they received or towing. And I think it's just important that we continue to take a look at some of these issues, and that's really all this resolution does, ask for an assessment. And I would hope that all the members of this committee will vote yes on that, so that we're able to take a look at what's going on with these tickets and make sure that we're actually sending them out fine, that they're actually being used to help with safety issues, not just to be able to collect revenue, and to make sure that it's equitably distributed, because I just got concerns with what we're hearing from people in the community about the tickets they're receiving and whether or not they are being concentrated in certain neighborhoods and all that. So thank you. I hope you all will vote yes on that. And in case I miss it, please also vote yes on all of the water ordinances in front of you. Thank you.
Any other members of the public on this specific item?
Good evening, everyone. My name is Lourdes Rivera. I live on the 5th District. Once again, we are here in this time. Like I said, my name is Lourdes Rivera. I live in Hilltop in the 5th District. There are 3 ordinances before today's Finance Committee that I urge you to vote yes on this ordinance and stopping shut-off of vulnerable households, specifically those with elderly, disabled, young children, stopping foreclosure for backdoor water bill, and committing to explore a better way to make water bill affordable for residents. And this water is human necessity and a human right. City Council have the power to ensure that water access is ensured for those who need it, even when they are struggling to make ends meet. In households where they are vulnerable individuals, children, disabled, elderly, and specifically, it's cruel to shut off water access to simply because they cannot afford the payment. So, my point also because of a lot of not only elderly and people with children, a lot of these, there is a program in the city of Wilmington that residents can apply, but a lot of this information is not getting through them. A lot of people doesn't know that you can apply to help them pay the water bill. So if those resources are making being available to these people, especially the Spanish community, with the lack of language, I always make it clear that a lot of this information being in English, a lot of them Hispanic, and the information don't get to our community at all. I'm a resident of 34 years, and hardly most of the information come from my people around me when it comes to meetings and things. It doesn't come from people that we should get it, the city, our city council, and we should get this information across the board. So I'm also, the two people prior to me already mentioned it, but I also speak to vote yes for fair ticket, ask the city to vote yes, and conduct an audit of Wilmington parking, booting, and towing practices. And even though they spoke about that, hire a third party to evaluate the fairness and the safety impact of Wilmington red light ticket. Like they say, are these really benefit the speeding of the people passing the red light, or this benefit the city to get more money? And I'm a believe somewhat of the red light, because there's a lot of this light on 2nd Street, they go from Jackson all the way to Union, they go green, 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 red, red, red. It should be stop in between. And there's a couple of cameras that our own phone let you know, but many people doesn't have access to a phone, especially elderly. Not all elderly have that access. But what I'm concerned about that is we vote yes, please vote yes in favor of the bill. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And just a quick reminder for public comments. You can speak, we're on this matter, but if you're, for whatever time constraints, if you need to speak on any other matter and leave, that's fine. It's on the agenda tonight. But I just wanted to inform you there will be a chance later to speak about the ticketing items on the agenda as well. All right. So just speaking, any other further comments on the red light study? Okay. All right. All right. So seeing none, I'll turn it back to members of council. Oh, sorry. I don't have a computer, so I am dependent on Marshall. So I believe we do have members on Zoom to speak about the red light study. Okay. Miriam Deed.
Hi, this is Miriam Dede. I live in the 8th District. I wanted to speak in favor of the study for red light cameras, and I really want to speak to this point that was made earlier about safety mattering and that we don't want people running red lights. I completely agree. I live on Lovering Avenue. I have 2 young children who I need to get into car seats at least twice a day, and it is a real concern of mine that people speed on my street. We don't have any red lights, but we do have a bunch of stop signs that people largely ignore. But red light camera enforcement, the way that Wilmington is doing it, doesn't necessarily mean safety. And there are a lot of ways that other cities have done where we can still enforce red lights, but not take money from vulnerable communities. Seattle, a few years ago, did automatic speeding enforcement cameras. And when they put that program in place, they gave people a warning for their first violation, and then they only had to pay a money traditional ticket the second time they were caught speeding. 95% of people that got the initial warning never got a second one. I think Wilmington can learn from that. There's no reason that an initial red light camera violation needs to have such a large monetary penalty. I think we can be smarter about it. This isn't an effective way to raise revenue, and it's cruel to a lot of our communities. So I urge everyone to please vote yes to study better ways that we can do red light camera enforcement. Thank you. And if you want to see that study, please email me. I'm happy to share the work that Seattle did.
Okay, thank you very much. Then I'll turn it to the next members on Zoom for public comment. I have a Stephen N.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, we can, sir.
Yes, this is Steve Peterson. I concur with what all four ladies and the one gentleman have said. So all I wish to add is that even though it was probably well-intentioned, that the red light issue comes across as cruel and greedy. So that's all I have to say. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. I have a Miss Pippa Howard.
Yes, thank you so much for the chance to speak. I am in support of further study, as all of the other citizens in the community have mentioned, regarding red light cameras and ticketing. I'm not sure, I entered late, so I'm not sure if people had the chance to speak about water yet. But I am asking for some kind of intervention. It seems since billing changed to monthly that my water bill has almost tripled, and I live alone. So my water consumption hasn't changed, but it has tripled, and it is making it difficult to keep up with my bill. So thank you all for your time.
Very well. Anyone else on Zoom? Zoom, Marshall? Okay. All right, I'll turn it now back to members of council. Councilmember McCoy, did you still have your hand up?
Yes, I had put it down momentarily. Actually, when the young lady got on the call from 8th District, she basically kind of brought to the attention that I was considering. When I talked about whether or not, I'd rather not have accidents. But of course, the whole point was to prevent them, by people not running through the red light. So what I wanted to know is whether or not, when it came to the study, did we actually give options in how we would change behaviors? Running through red lights and speeding are things that our neighboring little towns and communities aren't going through as much as we are, like in Newport and Ellesmere. But yet here within the city of Wilmington, I have people flying on South Lincoln Street. As soon as they leave out of Ellesmere, they're gunning it. And I'm like I said, and it's dangerous. They're running into homes and everything. So like my whole point is I don't want to ticket people so that, so that they can be safe. The whole point was to change behavior. So if the report actually shows where we get the options in order to change the behavior, so how we can do things a little differently, I am totally for that.
And Councilmember Field.
So this resolution is addressing simply a study. Just let's study it. Let's take a look. It's always good to review city policies. If there are technical details, problems with the program, let's fix it. If a warning first, followed by a fine for subsequent violations is the key, let's do that. But at the same time, if this is a way to shut down meaningful consequences for traffic enforcement, I would be very reluctant. Dangerous driving is at an all-time high. Right now in the state of Delaware, there is I believe we're either on pace or we've already met the record for fatalities in a single year. A couple of times people have come to me, constituents complaining about a ticket they received in the city of Wilmington. We reviewed the video together. They had crossed the white line after the light turned red, and they immediately recognized they were in the wrong, and they didn't do it again. So if you're driving in a way that is causing risk and endangering other people, there needs to be consequences. Automated enforcement has been shown to change behaviors throughout the city. All we have to do throughout the country. Philadelphia is a perfect example of this. At Roosevelt Boulevard, if you Google it, there's 50 articles on this. They dropped, the first year there was 900,000 tickets issued. Second year there was 70,000, and the third year there was 5,000. Same people driving. And the fines change the consequences. So let's look at it, let's study it, but, there has to be consequences for unsafe behavior on the road. Thank you.
And I apologize, there was another member of the public that we missed, Bree Arthur. Bree?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes. Floor is yours.
Hi. Yes. I live in the 7th district, your district, Chris. So I know we spoke with you last week, Cheyenne and myself, about the water bills. Same, sentiments of Miss Pippa. Bills are high. I'm in support of, us doing more research. Same thing as well as with the red light tickets. It's just becoming exorbitant. I also live alone and my bills have tripled, and I'm just not understanding why it just seems like the city is sucking the residents dry.
Thank you very much, Ms. Arthur. All right, so again, this is a resolution, so it does not need to be voted out of committee. I would just make, a final comment about this in terms of working to find a cost. I think we do need to narrow down the costs, and I'll work with Councilmember Darby on this. Simply because Ms. Day did bring up a great idea as to why the city doesn't do the first warning. From my own personal experience, I've had a Del Dot ticket, and I got one, and I've never gotten a Del Dot ticket since. But the city does not give you that grace. So, a lot of times, again, admittedly, I was in the wrong. But I think residents should at least get that one free warning, that approach. I mean, that seems like an easy fix, something we can potentially implement. But again, we don't know what the study is going to say, such as Councilmember Field said. So I think it's important as we look at these issues, as I serve on the task force along with my colleagues, and it's important to look at these. So this will be on the agenda April the 4th. Okay. All right. Thank you very much, Councilmember Darby. And the next item on the agenda is a resolution for an audit of the parking tickets, towing, and booting. Councilmember Darby, I believe this is your piece as well, and I believe you talked about it briefly, but if you could just go into the details with this matter.
Yeah, so this resolution is really looking at our towing and booting and parking ticket practices. So again, this is in response to the community. We had community meetings about parking tickets, and then a lot of things that were exposed about the city's booting and towing practices just seem very unfair, confusing, and very predatory. So in these conversations with community members, and also my experience being a resident with parking tickets, towing, and booting, I can personally understand how residents are feeling, because I have been impacted too. But this just asks, hey, can we do an audit of the cost of ticketing, towing, and booting, as well as the processes, right? So I know of someone who literally was booted and within a few hours then towed. They didn't get time to even try to get the money to try to pay to get the boot off, right? So the system just is not working. I know they try to go down and get their car. It's supposed to be open 24/7, and it's not. Who's holding the towing companies accountable? And when you reach out to the city, I know Brett has been responsive to that one situation I'm talking to where with the booting, and they were towed in the same day, and helping them to get their car out in items, and maybe a payment plan, I think, happened. So I know that the administration or that department, finance department, has been willing to work with people, but we need to come up with a fair, just process of how towing and booting works. Is very predatory. I know there's some legal things happening with the city right now in regards to seeing if our practices are even in violation legally. So this one just asks for an audit to happen, really, to look at our processes.
All right, and Councilmember Darby, same as the last item, it just, I don't know if we can ascertain price tags yet. I would like to at least get more or less placeholders, so we know how much it costs.
Yeah, so we've been working on that too. We've been reaching out to different assessors, trying to figure out a price on what the audit would look like. But this is also something our city auditor could do. So I know our city auditor, every year they have a list of what they're going to do for their audit. So we can also encourage our city auditor to put it on his agenda for his upcoming audit list that he does, to look at our parking tickets, towing, and booting process. So hopefully, I haven't had an issue with the city. I feel like the city auditor being biased or one way. Hopefully, he can give us a report that actually gives us a very comprehensive study that isn't everything the administration says or believes about parking tickets and towing and booting, but something that really gives us something to work with and understand about the processes, the cost, and those things and whatnot.
Thank you very much, Councilmember Darby. All right, I'll open up to council members in chambers. Councilmember Bracy.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I personally am very interested in this piece of, in us doing some type of audit. Councilmember Darby knows that there's currently, or I currently have legislation in the pipeline that would increase the threshold from $200 to $500, because 200 literally is 2 tickets. If you get 2 red light camera tickets, you're at the booting threshold. If you get 2 parking tickets and you don't pay them in time, once they hit all of the fees, they're at $100. That gets you a boot. I've had boots myself, so I understand the process. And then you have a certain amount of time, a finite amount of time to pay in full to get that boot off. So it'd be interesting to look at. It's not even interesting. It's something that we really should be looking at. This process. Is there an opportunity before someone is booted to receive a warning to let them know they're in jeopardy of getting a boot, and to contact the Department of Finance to get put on a payment plan? Are there other options that we can be putting in place before we actually put that boot on someone's car? And is the threshold too low? So these are all things that I think deserve some good conversation and some research around. So I think, as Councilman Field said about the previous resolution, it's always a good thing to kind of review what we're doing to make sure that it's working, and then to fix what's not. Thank you.
Other questions or comments by members of council? Councilmember Spadola?
Yeah, and just to piggyback off that, when I think of a boot, it's kind of like the 21st century of a debtor's prison, in the sense that back in the day, if you couldn't pay your debts, you would, they'd throw you in jail. But if you can't work to pay your debts, how are you going to pay your debts? And similarly, if you once you get the boot, how are you going to work to pay for the boot? So I would love for this audit for this company, but I do think there still needs to be a stick and carrot approach to getting people to pay their tickets. So whether it's a creative, I would say let's focus on how can we avoid the boots? What are more creative ways we can facilitate to get people to pay, rather than them, about to go to work and discovering there's a boot on their car? Because we still got to get people to pay, but maybe there's a better way to get people to pay.
Council President?
Yes, thank you. This is for the sponsor. Do we know the administration's feelings around this resolution? I mean, it's good for us to, I think most of us agree that there should be some type of study, but moving forward, are they willing to carry out the study? Do we know?
I'm not sure, but I do have, I did talk about this. I have meetings with the chief of staff and we did talk about these things, and she is aware of it. So they haven't said or did not say they supported it. So I'm not 100% clear.
Okay, all right, thank you.
All right, now I'll turn it to members of the public. Any public comments on just this item regarding ticketing and booting? Okay. Yeah, well, we'll do it in chambers first. That's fine.
Hello again. James Dalkey from the 7th District. I would like to speak in support of this legislation. To kind of piggyback off of what Councilman Spadola said, you know, it really is kind of like a debtor's prison thing with the boot. I personally think boots should be outlawed. I know there are some municipalities in the country that have done so, because exactly, if the problem is someone's not paying their bill, how is taking away their ability to go to work and make money going to make them be able to pay the bill? I personally think that I'm sure there's somebody out there that wants to scam the system, but the majority of people who get tickets like this and don't pay them, it's probably because they either, one, didn't know they had the ticket, or two, they just really didn't have the money for it and they had to choose between something like feeding their child and paying this ticket. When it comes to not knowing that you had the ticket, I have some personal experience with this. Where I actually did get a red light ticket a few years ago. I did not find out until I went to go register my vehicle and was told that I had to pay the ticket before I could get the registration. Now, of course, by that time, a bunch of fees were tacked on, and that $100 ticket was actually $250. Now, luckily, I have the ability to pay that, so I did, and I just got my vehicle registered, but I know that for some people that could have been a stopping stone, and then they wouldn't know what to do next. But really, the question it begs is, why did I not get notified? I would say that I'm a, you know, I check my mail, I check my email. I'm a very educated voter. I peruse the city website a lot. You know, my day job is just trying to figure out how systems work and talking to people. So I think that if I couldn't figure out that I had a ticket, you know, who's the target audience here? What are the qualifications that you need to successfully figure out you had a ticket with the city of Wilmington? And I think, you know, having an audit would be great, because I really do question the integrity of the company that is doing some of these collection efforts. And again, I would point back to that study I referenced earlier, because over the last 5 years, we have consistently given over 40% of the fines and fees collected from our red light and parking tickets directly back to that company for enforcement. And then another 20 to 25% goes back to the city itself to pay the employees that do that enforcement as well. So again, you have a lot of money that's going out of the system, coming out from the pockets of some of our poorest residents, and I'm not quite sure if it's actually changing behaviors. Thank you.
Good evening.
Hi, my name's Christian. Again, thanks again to the council president, all the council members here. I'm really excited. There's a whole committee hearing really devoted to this issue of fines and fees. I think that taking the time to look into this is great. And I think that the audit, you know, I think it's pointed out, like, there's no cost to doing this. The audit department's on hand, and just as a council, just directing them to take a look at parking tickets, towing and booting is a really great idea. I urge you to support it. And I think that one of the great things about having some attention to this issue, people have been, you know, having problems with parking tickets, towing, booting. Like, I don't know anybody who hasn't gotten a parking ticket or a red light ticket in Wilmington. Like, we all have this direct experience. And what that means is the money's coming out of, like, residents' pockets, like, all the time for these things. So there is a need for reform. But specifically around booting and towing, I think why the audit could be really helpful is because one of the benefits of being involved and doing some of this, you know, on the Fines and Fees Task Force is we've been able to get some information. And the Finance Department has been really great about sharing information. And, you know, it appears, and hopefully, you know, if you have any additional questions for the Finance Director, you can ask him directly, but that the city's really not collecting that much off of booting and towing. Like, it seems like it's less than $200,000 a year for the last 5 years. So I just want to, you know, any of us who's gotten a boot or a tow, you know, like, what a giant hassle it is. And I've also paid tickets when I go to register my car. Like, that's much less of a hassle. You know, you have time to, like, pull together the money. It doesn't, like, you know, completely upset your day. Like, we do have other mechanisms to collect money from people who owe parking tickets and red light tickets. So I think looking at the system, looking at, like, what it's doing, how much it's generating, like, all of that is, like, a really good idea. So, you know, getting more information about it, understanding how the system is working, and then all of you, you know, working with the administration to decide, like, how do we want to do this so that it's both achieving the purpose, but also not like an undue burden on residents. So thank you very much.
Yes, sir. What do you move?
Next speaker.
Yes, good evening. My name is Brother Dwight L. Davis, and I was just listening to, I guess this is a request for an audit. I guess I don't really understand what an audit would do with respect to addressing what I believe is the unconstitutionality of the issue of the red light itself. Now, of course, I know you're not going to look into the constitutionality of it, but I would appreciate if someone could just help me to understand what revenues are generated from this process, because we might, with the Bank of America leaving and other lost revenue coming into the city, leaving out of the city, we might need to take another look at whether or not we want to attack this this revenue producing instrument. Now, I just want to know what type of revenues, if anyone can, is coming into the city that is benefiting the city and benefiting the residents. And lastly, I don't know what evidence you have that it's just residents that are being ticketed and booted as opposed to those who are visiting our city. Oh, thank you.
I have a question. Mr. Muhammad Bey, I have a concern about the camera. You know, I left Delaware in '86 and came back home and got cameras everywhere. I was not aware. Is that something that the city implemented? Did the people vote for it? You know, I mean, 'cause we had that in Houston and the people voted against it, you know, 'cause there was no benefit to the people. So I just was asking, did the people, did the city county implement it, or did the people vote for it? Thank you.
Thank you very much. And again, we're taking stock of all questions, so we will make sure we'll get answers to those questions. So, because we don't speak for the administration, we don't have the information. But Ms. Bass Knight is taking that down. Thank you very much.
Good evening, City Council President and City Council members. My name is Rochelle Wilson, advocate to make some intelligent noise. On more than one occasion, I have received tickets and boots, and I have had to deal with that at DMV, paying additional fees and so forth. My issue is an appeal board. I have tried on more than one occasion because, like other people in the room, I do study the law, and I am familiar with my constitutional rights. And yet, in my lawful writings to the appeal board, no matter how many times I've done it, I have always failed and continued to pay the ticket. So, regardless of how else you decide to deal with this, should you find yourself continuing with the practice of red light tickets and boots and things of such nature, please put an appeal board in place that is actually going to be fair and just about the appeals that people are putting on their desk. You know, as this gentleman said before, I'm an educated woman, and so I can speak for myself, and I write extremely well. And I know my laws, I know the commerce, the UCCs, and in applying all of that, there should be some level of remedy or recourse, and there is never remedy or recourse in the appeal boards. So please make some considerations there as well. Thank you.
Councilmember Doherty, let's finish the public comment. Yep, let's get all the public members in, and then we can turn back to council. Thank you. Yes.
Real quick.
How's everybody doing? I'm Timeless Thomas, concerned citizen. I just heard one thing that was a small concern, that we were comparing Roosevelt Boulevard to red light cams in Wilmington, which is like apples and forks. And I also think the placement of the red light cams are designed to entrap people as well. But moving right into it, I think a good beginning would be an audit of the processes for vehicle recovery and the processes for everything you guys are trying to do. I just wanted to say that. And thank you.
Next speaker.
Thank you. I have one more concern to bring up to the board. The other concern I have, even if we are here tonight, and even though we all know that you are listening to our concern, we have the lack of communicating with the city of Wilmington when we come with parking enforcement. When you have a concern, whether it's a ticket for the city, whether it's city parking, whether it's booting, whether it's anything, talking to anybody up here is really an issue. So if any of you would be doing me a favor, that would be another concern of mine. I spent over an hour trying to help a neighbor with a ticket that he got. And I couldn't get through. And city parking enforcement do not answer. You get a voicemail. And sometimes you don't get a message back. So that's why I got up again, because we are here bringing it to you, voting yes for this, but the communication with the city is, to me, impossible. Thank you.
Good evening.
Amanda Chapman, First District. I'm so glad that the young lady just mentioned as far as the communication is concerned, because that would be a real issue for me. That would be a real issue for me. I had a situation just a couple months back where my car was booted, and I found out about it on my way to work. And so the only reason that I found out that I had a fine was because they were going to be doing some kind of gas line work on my street, that they put the barrels out literally at the last minute. So by the time I got home the night before, the barrels were not there. I wake up in the morning, a police officer knocks on my door to ask me to move my car. And then he says, and I was about to leave for work. This is a day prior. And then he says, by the way, did you know you have a ticket? I said, no, I didn't. And he says, yeah, and the ticket was apparently from months prior that I had no notice of. Like, I didn't know I had a ticket. It was a parking ticket or something. And I said, okay. I went to work that day. That day I didn't have the boot. I went to work, just life being life. I did have the information. The very next morning I had the boot because I wasn't able to take care of it that day. Again, the police officer knocked on my door for me to move my car off the street at, say, 7 a.m. And by 7:15 a.m. the next morning, I had a boot. And so even with the little tickets that come about, you know, things on your property in reference to the communication issue, I would really like to see some level of change in reference to letting residents know or have some level of update. I don't know what the exact they are, but they were like the $50 tickets. You used to get a warning, now you don't. You just get the ticket. And I I came in to kind of take care of everything, and I said, let me just check on everything else. I had to fill out a Freedom of Information Act application in order to get information on my tickets. I've been a city resident for 10 years, living in the same home, and it took about 2 weeks for me to get information back about my own tickets. So, thank you.
All right, I'm going to jump to Zoom. I believe you have a Miss Benson.
Yes, thank you and good evening. I as well am a victim of booting and ticketing. I haven't ever been told, but definitely ticketing. It's very stressful to people, individuals, because it definitely flares up your anxiety as well to come out of your house in the morning, getting ready to take your kids to work, and you see a boot there on your ticket on your car, and you really can't go anyway. And or to come out of work and you see a boot on your car and you have to go pick up your kids. It really puts you in a headspin to kind of figure out what you need to do. Again, definitely do the kudos on the communication. The communication is definitely subpar, and it should definitely be better. I definitely am in agreement of some more checks and balances being put into place, and would definitely love to work with anyone that would help. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Now I'll turn it back to council members. Before we finish up with the sponsor, I did want to say, definitely we hear you, as this has touched everyone. I had the other day a colleague in my office, someone legally trained assistant. She ran into the same issue, where she, despite best efforts, could not make it through to customer service, and had her car booted in Charlie Square. So I completely know that. She vented to me for a whole afternoon about this, and it affects everyone of all income levels, all races, and it's something I believe the city needs to do better. So I think whatever we can do in council to try to work and make sure this happens, I think working to number one, find someone that can do an audit, I think is number one, and then Councilmember Darby may, she'll have the last word, but find someone that can actually implement the work that the Fines and Fees Task Force is already doing, and kind of make it on a broader scale. So Councilmember Darby?
Yes, no, so just my last comment is that I just hope that my colleagues support these two legislations in regards to parking tickets, towing, booting, and looking at red light camera tickets. Our constituents, ourselves, we have been impacted. This is something that needs to be dealt with, like internally, looking at our processes, now looking at our communication, what that looks like. I know a few things. I don't know. We have the finance director. I don't know if he wants to speak about the parking, booting, towing. I know he was invited by the administration, so I don't know if he's supposed to speak. They invited him.
I don't, it's up to Director Taylor. I don't know if you're prepared to speak on the audit.
I'm not prepared to speak, but, no comment. I mean, if that's what you want to do.
All right. And we do have a member of the public. Again, I apologize for the lag. We're somewhat delayed on our end. I have Ms. Day. I don't want to forget you.
Hi, thank you. This is Miriam Day again from the 8th District. I actually just wanted to, I know you'd offered if we weren't able to stay for the whole thing, it was okay to comment in advance on some of the bills that are later on. I wanted to comment to speak in support of all three of the ordinances around water. Almost a third of city residents are delinquent on their accounts, and there was over almost $800,000 that the city gave out last year in aid to people who were delinquent on their water bills. I don't think that's not a good place to be. We shouldn't need to give out so much aid to people who can't afford water. It's a basic necessity, and if we have so many people in the city who can't afford it, we need to make changes so that people are able to afford it. It's just radically inefficient and cruel for our city to have water set at a rate that's unaffordable to so many of its residents. So I think it's just kind of a basic decency measure to stop foreclosures for water. the average owed for residents in the city who were delinquent was about $800. So it's just too small an amount for foreclosure to ever justify something as severe as a foreclosure. And then I also really support the ordinance about not shutting off water. So I know for not shutting off water for vulnerable households. A lot of other jurisdictions already do that. We actually does that and more. They don't shut off water. You can ask that your water not be shut off if you have any children, anyone under the age of 18, and the police is asking for anyone under the age of 5. So I think these are really basic provisions. I think it's really important to support it, especially at this level. And if people have more questions and need to know more about this, don't kill it. You know, we can vote it forward at this stage. And then if people have more questions and want to learn more, there's still plenty of time before a final vote. So I do have to log off, so I won't be able to speak later on, but I really urge everyone to support these, what I see as really common sense ordinances. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. All right, and again, regarding item number 2 on the agenda, this is a resolution, so it does not need to be voted out. I believe it will be on the April 4th council floor. All right. Moving right along, everyone. We'll move to item number 3 on the agenda. This is an ordinance, so it does need to be voted. This is substitute 1 to ordinance 24-007, which is an ordinance to amend chapter 45 of the city code to prohibit the Department of Finance from including arrearages of unpaid water, sewage, and stormwater fees related to munitions against customers that are owner occupied. And this is the ordinance. And Councilmember Darby, I believe this item is yours.
Yes, so this ordinance is looking at our foreclosure process. So this is saying specific to anything, fees, fines, anything related to water, not including that solely, or if it's in conjunction with another debt, not including water, period, right? So the practice of foreclosing on residential homes over water and billing debt is both inhumane. Every individual deserves the security of the home without the looming threat of homelessness over basic utilities. So this legislation is just saying, let's not foreclose on someone's home, including water or solely for water. So that is the very basics of this legislation.
Okay. A question, Councilmember Darby. Is there someone from the administration here to speak on this item as well? Okay. Is this similar to a piece? I believe Councilmember McCoy also had a piece. Is this similar to that piece?
Yes.
Okay. All right. I just want to make sure. All right. And we have the administration here. So if you would, Finance Director Taylor.
Thank you. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Brett Taylor. I'm the Director of Finance for the City of Wilmington. There has been discussion about this particular piece of legislation. Let me put it in context for you. We have 36,000 customers. We have approximately 5,900 customers who owe over $100, over $500 in water bills. 5,900 out of 36,000 customers. When this administration came in, we had an accounts receivable that was in excess of $30 million. For decades, we had not done anything with respect to collections, etc. With that in mind, we started a process in the administration where we would create what we call rules of engagement. And that is, we would reach out to customers to try to get them into the office to help us negotiate payment agreements, create opportunities for them to pay off prior balances. Just some statistics. We had introduced a first-time utility assistance program. We served over 1,400 customers, and we gave out $1.8 million in federal and a city proceeds to assist those customers. We think that the program was a big success, and we want to continue to do that. This council memorialized $250,000 water assistance program as part of the budget last year. We are also making requests to the federal government to continue what they call the LIWAP program, Low Income Housing Water Assistance Program, to make that a permanent program, which will have money coming in. The point is that anybody who comes into our office, we can have a conversation about how to correct their situation. Whether we have the proceeds or not is another, we will obviously work through that. We've given payment agreements to many individuals that do that. So we do our best at trying to do that. Let me talk a little bit about the unintended consequences of this legislation. The legislation itself, munitions and water shutoffs are really only the true enforcement arms that we have, to be honest. However, if we were to look at the data, over the course of the last 8 years, we have only shut off we have only taken to sheriff's sale 44 properties that were for water utility only. And in that case, that's over 8 years. That's a handful, less than 10 a year. And those utilities were pretty significant. Those from that, we have also issued water shutoffs that are relative to the 36,000 relatively minor. We think it's a better posture for us to go ahead and negotiate with customers and meet them where they are. Everybody's situation is different. By having a broad brush approach to this, you're going to take away that differentiation. Now, the utility is a self-sufficient utility. That means the water direct fees from the water utility that people consume and then pay for the operations of the water. It does not subsidize the general fund. In fact, 10 years ago, the water sewer fund was in big trouble, and general fund had to subsidize it through property taxes and the like. I'm pleased to say that the water utility is now operating at a break-even point. In fact, it's building a small amount of reserve in the rate stabilization reserve, which we've had city council, we've had negotiations about that, we've put that into place. That rate stabilization reserve is there to make decisions about how much rates will increase for the system overall. To take away any opportunity for us to look at these munitions is going to have an unintended consequence. Now, it may help in the very near term, but in the long term for the water utility, it becomes a liability. The second point I want to say is that you're signaling to the rating agencies. When we talk about going out for bonds, they assess our ratings based on our ability to recover revenue and to be able to keep the utility self-sufficient. Frankly speaking, this is signaling to them that we are not taking into our fiduciary responsibility to keep this water utility solvent. We had conversations with members of city council whereby we have agreed that we will, before we take anybody to sheriff's sale for a water-only option and in this case, looking at water as in a combination with property taxes that will exceed the $10,000 or $7,000 threshold that we set for going to sheriff's sale, we will exhaust every opportunity to talk to the customer to see whether or not there's an option out there for them. We have agreed to do that. In fact, we're going to be creating policies. We have what we call the rules of engagement. This is an administrative policy that is crafted by the finance department, passed by the administrative board on the instructions for our agents in working with customers of how to work out these possibilities with customers. Included in that is going to be making calls to the customers, getting them in here and having a conversation about how best to remedy their situation. We think that my philosophy has always been, and will always continue to be, you meet people where they are. But we only can meet people where they are if we understand what their individual condition is. Taking a broad brush stroke at this through, restricting potential enforcement is really not the way to do it from a holistic standpoint. Look, I want you to understand that we're not, despite what people may say about government overall, I think that we try to be a compassionate department. When people call, we try to make the accommodations as best we can. That is the value system that I have imbued through most of my staff. I encourage all my staff to do that. Are there situations where we can't help people? Absolutely. Absolutely. And we'll be honest with them and upfront. Can we communicate better? Absolutely. In fact, we are running another set of digital advertisements, encouraging people to call us on the water utility program. We've got approximately $20,000 left in our UAP program from the CARES Act, and we have another $250,000 available to help people with their own individual circumstances. I just encourage you, City Council, you make the laws, and I respect that. I just want you to be aware that sometimes an action here will have consequences further down the line. Our department is still committed to helping the customer. That's our first and foremost value. If we can't help them, we'll be honest with them about that. In some cases, customers may ignore us. Customers ignore our pleas to come in. And, but we encourage everybody to do that if they feel that they need assistance, and we'll do the best job we can to do it. So I think that's my comments for now.
All right. Thank you much. Thank you very much, Director Taylor. And I have just the first pointed question about your comment. And I'm not speaking about the other pieces, I'm speaking about this piece. If the foreclosure ban was to take into effect, the city still would be able to go proceed on like overdue taxes, correct?
I'm sorry?
The city would still be able to proceed to foreclosure on past due taxes, correct?
That is correct.
Okay.
Property taxes are probably more, we consider those more egregious, just in terms of you don't pay your property taxes, because that funds the general fund. The water sewer fund, is a different fund. It's funded through different pots of money. But yes, you're correct. Okay. We would be able to go through the property taxes.
So
but what happens is if you discount the water piece, so say you owe $13,000 in property taxes, water, sewer, and L&I fees, right? By eliminating the water utility piece of that, it drops people below where our threshold would be for, we had set a $10,000 threshold before we would even take anybody to sheriff's sale. We're now looking at, because we've gotten through a lot of those 10,000 or greater, we've either called them in for a payment agreement. And I will remark that when we take people to sheriff's sale, the munition itself triggers a sheriff's sale notice. That sheriff's sale notice, more than 50% of the people who get the sheriff's sale notice come in and help and work with us. It becomes our last ditch attempt to engage the customer after many, many calls. Over 50% come in and help us and come in and work with us on this.
No.
It's the ones that go to the sheriff's sale that are are really the ones that are ignoring.
Now,
Moving
is there
forward.
similar to the state, such as mortgage foreclosure, has the city even thought about setting up, say, a mediation program? Because I know I've had close loved ones and family members who have received foreclosure notices, and I know that's scary when you get it and you want some mediation process. Is that something that the city's thought about, is having a mediation process? Again, not to add another layer, but where someone who gets a foreclosure notice would then have a chance to mediate right away.
We have not talked about a mediation process. However, I would say that from an informal standpoint, we work as a mediator. I mean, when they come in and have a conversation with us about staying their sheriff sale, I mean, we've stayed a considerable number of sheriff sales as a result of people getting into payment agreements to be able to pay off that debt over time. And it comes with, we often settle for, we take off penalties and interest in order to make it more affordable, spread the payments out over 48 months. Now, I will say, we do have a high default rate. But from that standpoint, at least we have made the attempt to try to get them in and make that deal. From that standpoint, I don't know what other enforcement arm that we could possibly have. We have water shut off, right? In fact, we have sent out, I would say over half of the people who get a water shut-off notice come in and also pay because they've seen that notification. So the water shut-off and the delinquency notices really become our last-ditch tools for this. Like I said, anybody who wants to come in and have a conversation about how to settle their debt can do so.
All right, Councilmember Darby, I believe it's your piece.
Yeah, I have a few questions. So one of my questions was, how many residence accounts did the city foreclose on last year? Do you have that number?
How many, I'm sorry?
How many residential accounts did the city foreclose on last year?
Residential accounts. I believe we gave that number. Well, I will tell you that in 2024, or 2023, we had 62 sheriff sales. Okay? That's it, out of, right now, 5,900 residential properties that owe money.
Right.
62. However, on the finance end, only 41 actually went to sheriff's sale. I would say that most of those were, well, I would say that they're a mix of residential and commercial properties. I thought I had given you a breakdown of that, but I will look into that.
Okay, no, I have a, I'm so sorry, can I ask for?
Yes.
Oh.
He asked me to take over.
Oh, okay. Like, that doesn't look like Chris, but, so I'll get the breakdown, I guess, later from you. But I wanted to talk about the payment agreement, right? If you can explain to people how that works, because I know that some people were having issues. So if I owe, let's just make up a number, $5,000, they at least ask for at least 50% or a certain percentage, and most people don't have the 50% to put up, or they do the 50% and then still can't afford the payment plan that is set up for them. I know that has happened before with me with Delmarva. When I was behind on my Delmarva bill, I scraped up the funds to get the deposit, but I couldn't afford the payment plan they had me going forward. So then I ended up back in the same situation like a few months down the line. So what does a payment agreement look like in the, specifically for water?
Our standard agreement would be 50%. However, we have clauses in our rules of engagement which can vary those deposits down. If we feel that there's a real hardship issue, we have been known to reduce that deposit significantly. But here's the issue. If people don't put in at least some deposit, the less of the deposit, the more likely they're inclined not to continue through their payment agreement. Like I said, we have gone into payment agreements that have been much lower than the 50%. And it's something we're open to. I mean, again, we're trying to get better in terms of what the rules of engagement are with customers. If we need to vary that, we can do that.
Is the $10,000 threshold to have someone start the foreclosure process, is that a written policy currently today, or is that just something that you go by in your department?
It is a written policy in our rules of engagement. In fact, our last, we had gone through a pretty extensive, we had worked at the very beginning of the administration. We started taking a look at the entire accounts receivable list. We had our top 250, 250 owers with the large amounts, right? As we worked it down, we were finding that we're getting closer and closer to that $10,000 threshold. So in some cases, in a lot of cases, that debt is still on the books, but they have payment agreements already in place. So now we're looking at the range between $7,000 and $10,000 and trying to get monitions in. We're working our way down through the amount. I will tell you that over the course of since FY16, only 765 properties have gone actually to sale and been sold to a third party. 350 of those were finance related. So we're talking, 1/100% of the entire 36,000. Am I doing my math correctly? Only 350 have actually gone through the entire process. So we are willing to get them on the payment agreement in order to avoid that very situation.
I'm so sorry. I gotta ask you about the water assistance program. I'm sorry. So the water assistance program that the city keeps talking about is so great. It's so wonderful. I'm glad that we have it. However, what I think is so backwards about even having the water assistance program is that we don't have a way to catch people up front. Like, it should be affordable up front so that people don't even need to get into that water assistance fund. To get the water assistance fund, it's really only pretty much for homeowners, because there's really not a lot of tenants who's responsible for water utility bills. Let's be honest, we're in the city of Wilmington, that's not common. So we know that it's gonna be for homeowners. And then another component of this is that you have to be 3 or more months past due. So it's not like I'm 1 month past due, I need help, I can apply to this fund. You have to wait for someone to get in massive debt before you help them. That's backwards to me. And where we need, and I'm gonna talk later about creating affordable water program, hopefully assessment for us to establish a affordable waterability program. But I think it's just backwards to keep saying that we have this water assistance program, but we know that 1/3 of people are delinquent and can't pay. So that's the backward part of this, to keep saying that this program is like so great, it's working, it's the solution or answer, where we are waiting for people to be 3 months in debt before we even think about helping them. And then they have to show proof of income, so they have to be below a certain poverty level to even qualify. They have to be pretty much a homeowner. So there's a lot of stipulations on who can even get access to that water assistance program. And then we wait for them to get in debt instead of developing a program to make it affordable for them. So that's the part that's questionable for me. And then the last thing I'm gonna ask is about, we don't foreclose on commercial property. So if I own a restaurant and I'm back behind on my water bill, I am not gonna get foreclosed on. So we foreclose on families, but we don't foreclose on businesses.
I'm going to work backwards. Your last statement is incorrect. We have foreclosed on commercial properties. So I'd be happy to give you a list of the properties that we foreclosed on for commercial properties. However, let me just mention, you are correct. One of the problems with when we instituted monthly billing, the whole idea was to provide the homeowner an opportunity to look at their bill more frequently than just quarterly, right?
And it went up.
Well, we'll talk about that, but let's talk about the frequency. So you've got the homeowner now gets a bill every month, and they should be looking at their bill every month. I had 3 instances this week, 3 instances where we had homeowners who had significant, I mean, we're talking 4 times the consumption run through their system, and for 6 months. So they would be at 3,000 gallons, and then they had 20,000 gallons, 20,000 gallons, 40,000 gallons. I saw one as high as 108,000 gallons. Then it went back down to 7 because they had gotten it fixed. But they didn't look at their bill, right? And they would have seen that they had a leak on the property. All of a sudden, now they're asking for relief from that bill because of that excess consumption. If I write that off, okay, that means that that money, we've already produced the water at a cost. That means that I'm not able to recover the cost. So you're right. Monthly billing was supposed to do that. However, our current Munis system does not allow us, it does not kick out that information for us. We'd have to look at every single account every month for us to get, to understand where people are. So we're adopting, thank you, City Council for agreeing. We're adopting a new utility billing solution that's going to replace Munis. What this solution is going to do is going to use the technology to kick out someone who, so say you had 3,000 gallons and then all of a sudden your toilet's running and you've got 7,000 gallons use. It will tell you that you're above your average. You ever see your Delmarva home bill? I get it all the time. Your property is greater than the average property that's out there. This system's going to be able to kick that out and send you a text message saying your water bill is higher than usual. So I agree with you that but it's a system error, and it's a system limitation, I should say. And what we're trying to do is correct that with the new utility billing system. So we're going to try to get ahead of people. What we're doing now is just trying to bail the boat, right? All the people that had gotten all of those, that had built up those large balances, now we have to figure out how to get that corrected. So I hope that answered some of your questions.
All right. Council members, Spadola, I believe you had your hand raised.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Of the 44 properties over the past 8 years, that, from if I understand what you said earlier correctly, that you had the city foreclose upon due to water. Could you go into some specifics as much as you can about what happened? Like, what was the homeowner not doing that? Did they just not communicate? Or was it an inability to pay and the city was no longer working with them? Can you go into detail?
I'd have to go into the detail. I don't have those off the top of my head. I wouldn't call out anything specific. But let me give you some examples. They're not all residential customers. A lot of them are landlords, right? They've kept up on their property taxes, L&I fees, but they have not paid their water bills, and they've gotten that far up. And in some cases, they could be vacant properties that didn't pay stormwater. Now, you know, sometimes you've got to also make the distinction between stormwater, water and sewer, and then stormwater. A lot of foreclosures also go because they've accumulated a big stormwater bill. You may have a vacant property in which the consumption is off. However, you let it go for a couple of years. It still accumulates a stormwater bill. And that stormwater bill can rise to the threshold where we would go and we'd have to foreclose, or we'd have to have a munition on it. In a lot of cases, if I took a look at that list, and I can provide that list, I'll have to redact the names, of course, but that list, I suspect that there will be a number of stormwater properties on there.
Yes, Councilman.
Of those 44, how many were vacant?
I'd have to look at the list and see
Can
how
you
many
just
were.
give me a ballpark?
I really couldn't. I mean, maybe half of them.
Okay. I have one more.
Yes, Councilman.
So you mentioned if the city didn't have the ability to foreclose upon due to water, the bond agencies would view the city's credit unfavorably. Can you talk more about the negative ramifications of that?
Sure. I've been through many of these bond rating reviews. And what they do is they look at risk profile. And the idea is revenue is sacrosanct when it comes to being able to pay debt back, right? So you're going to have to be able to determine if there's a liability out there that would prevent you from having a revenue, being able to pull the revenue in. The good news is that we positioned the water sewer fund with adequate reserves. We've got a good, from the general fund side, now everything's geo bonds, okay? So everything's collected together. We've got an emergency fund, a budget reserve account. We've got rate stabilization. We have a tax stabilization reserve. We have an O&M reserve. So in all those cases, that looks favorably to us. We have also positioned ourselves where we've got, I think a fairly stable, maybe a little better than break even view at this as we build these reserves. So it's not as big of an issue. However, it does signal if there's weakening in terms of the legislative process to weaken the ability to collect that revenue. They weigh that as part of the signal as to what may be happening consequences down the road. So,
But what would happen very specifically in a dollars and cents perspective if the bond agencies lowered our bond rating? Like what would the cost?
If it lowered our bond
what would
rating?
the cost to the city be?
Generally speaking, if we have a very healthy bond rating, we can borrow at a very, very cheap rate. If you lower your bond, if they lower our bond rating, and at one point we were at a negative outlook for the bond rating. We have since gotten out of that in the last 4 years. What it would do is it would increase the percentage interest rate that you would have to pay on those bonds. So right now, in this climate, we would probably be at 3%. You could lose anywhere up to 50 basis points, so you'd be at 3.54%. If you were into, a B rating, a B plus rating, you don't want to be any lower than a B plus rating. A B plus rating, you'd be paying closer to 4 or 5%.
Thank you.
Councilmember Field.
So I'm sticking to just the first ordinance, the 24007, amending chapter 45 to ban foreclosures for water utility arrearages. I met with several constituencies who are roughly favorable to these changes. And I spoke of the need to compare the Wilmington experience to other cities. If we're proposing something to change what we're doing here in Wilmington, we need to, we're not unique, there's hundreds of other cities that are our size or bigger. Is there a reason the Philadelphia representative isn't here? There was gonna be a presentation on that.
Yeah, he's gonna come, probably at this point, probably, because we don't have committee meetings, but they couldn't make it tonight.
Okay. Do we have examples of other cities where they've installed a ban on foreclosures? Do we have sort of examples that we can look at?
Yeah, so we can provide them for you. I don't have them with me today, now, but there are some.
Okay. So because I think that would be, do you have them now off the top of your head, or is there anybody here that can speak to that?
Can you speak to the question?
Because I think that's, if we're going to vote on this now, that's something that I would like to see and be able to understand.
In your public comment, okay.
No, yeah. If someone from the public knows, that's something we can address. Thank you. And Councilmember Bracy.
Okay,
Question.
thank you. So I've been taking notes, and I had a couple things. I think Councilman Spadola hit one of my questions, which was how many of the 44 were occupied versus vacant? And then also I wanted to understand, how long does it take to hit that threshold of 10,000? Like, is that over a period of 3 years or 2 years, or is that, like, how long does it actually take someone to get to that threshold point? Is that something you could find out for us?
I can. It depends on whether you are a resident, a commercial property, or a big commercial property, right? You can get to that, kind of those thresholds, right?
Right.
However, if you take a residential property, a typical residential property could be anywhere from $40 to roughly $80. I think our average is about, I think it's about 50 in terms of, so it takes a while for you to reach that threshold. This is the thing that we've been kind of suffering under for the last 8 years, is that we came in and a lot of these debts were already on the books, and they just continue to do. I will tell you, I'm looking here, I have the 44 in front of me. I apologize, I have it here. Let's see. Most of these are some of these were rescinded. I'd have to, in order to give this to you, I'd have to redact the names. I'll give you the redacted names, and it'll show you exactly who and what the result was of that sheriff's sale. Okay?
Thank you. Follow up, Mr.
Yes,
Chair?
please.
A couple of things, well, two other things. One, and well, actually, maybe both of these are to the sponsor. Would it be something for us to consider excluding vacant properties from this, so that if there is a need for the finance to still go after those vacant properties, they have the ability to do so?
Yeah, I was going to clarify that. This is only for owner occupants.
Okay.
So this legislation doesn't deal with rentals or vacant. So this is it's owner occupants. So this is only talking about pretty much homeowners.
That's what I'm doing.
Because I think we should deal with landlords and residential and vacant properties a little bit differently than with how we deal with homes where there's like a homeowner in there. So it's a very different process. So this does not address that. So that also goes to the point where there's 44 with over a long period of time. But then in that, we know that some of them are vacant. We know that some of them are landlords. So when we take that down, the number gets even lower, right? So then the impact on lowering this number, as we keep saying, oh, it's going to affect our bond and it's going to bankrupt the city, these notions that keep coming up from the administration and the finance department, the number is even less than 44. And I even think one family is too many, but the number is less than 44 in the number that he just gave, because as you said, there's vacant properties on there, there's some residential, and this is only dealing with owner occupants. So we're talking about an even smaller number here.
So, and maybe a point of clarity, and Mark, we can follow up. We've all heard a request for this list of 44. Can you break down how many are residential owner
Yes.
occupied? Because that seems to be, I think we are talking different things. We're talking about landlords. This will not constrain the city from going after landlords, or slumlords, or, so, you know, if it's 5 out of 44, then I think that would give the council members that have heartburn less heartburn. So if you could provide, when that breakdown, just code it so council members know as we vote on this.
Will do.
All right. And
May I also make
Yes.
One of the other unintended consequences I just want to make you aware is we have roughly 13,000 county customers. And the question here is, we're going to have to make the decision about if these individuals are not being held to pay in terms of the sheriff's sales. We have a concern about how we're going to subsidize the system. So, you know, in order to continue to make our water sewer fund solvent, we want to make sure that it breaks even at minimum, right? So we're going to have some conversation a little bit about what it means in terms of the effect on the county customers.
Right. It says city residents inside the legislation. So this is only for city residents, owner occupied. So we're not addressing landlords. We're not addressing vacant property.
But my point is if you're focusing on one segment of the customer base, the other segment is going to have to pick up the cost of offsetting it for that customer. So the county customers are going to be impacted by the fact that we would carve out these.
So are you saying that you will raise the threshold? Does the threshold change?
No, but if I'm not able to collect, and this goes across all of these ordinances that you're talking about tonight, anything that we do that restricts us from obtaining the necessary revenue from a customer has to be picked up by everybody else in the system. So I just want you to be aware of that. So we're going to have to balance rate structures in order to accommodate these changes in being able to obtain this revenue.
Yes, for less than 44, who are not all owner occupants, over how many years you said the 44, 5 years?
Yeah, it's since 2000,
So that is going to put us
2016.
into this big bind?
I'm not, you're talking about this one piece of legislation, I'm talking about the other pieces.
Right now, we're on this one.
Yeah, let's stick on this, let's stick on this
Okay.
matter.
All right. So
So,
we're on this one, the foreclosure one? Yeah, that's the one that we're on. So for under less than 44 homes and over a long-term policy, you're saying that it's gonna make our bond rate?
These are the water only.
Yeah, that's
The
what I'm talking about, the
44
water on.
homes are just water
And
only.
you said they, all of the city residents, owner occupant, you're saying all 40 of them are not owner occupants. You said that.
Yeah, I have
earlier.
some that are tenants, I have some that are businesses.
Yeah, so
I
this
have
is
some-
just, so less than 44, because we can't decide the number yet, right? So less than 44, I don't even know what that number is. It's gonna make our bond rating go down. It's gonna pretty much hurt our water system over time for less than 44 households over a long period of time.
But let me ask you this question. If you're going to do this, what messaging are you sending out?
That if, it's actually cheaper to keep someone housed for our society than it is for them to be homeless, right? One household is too many for me, for our there are cities that are going different ways to collect. $10,000 is the threshold, so at $10,000, I can take your home, and your home might be worth 90, 100,000, whatever it's worth in the city, then I can start taking your home and your whole livelihood. That's, I don't buy it that 44 households or less over, you're not even saying 44 in a year. You're saying 44 over a long period of time. I don't remember what you said, 5 years or 3 years? What was it?
Since 2016.
2016. Since 2000, how long ago was that? My daughter was born in 2015. She just turned 9 today. So over 8-9 years ago, over 8-9 years, you're saying less than 44 households is going to make our bond rating go down, because we're not even talking about 44.
Well,
we're talking about a number less than 44.
It's not going to make your bond rating go, this one
said
instance
that.
is not going to make your bond rating go down. All I'm saying is that when you are talking about revenue, that's something you just have to take into consideration. It's just something that you just have to take into consideration. I'm not arguing with you. I just wanted to give you a data point.
I'm trying to understand, like.
Well, the
I'm
other
trying-
thing is,
not like-
the other thing is that, you know, given this legislation, I don't think, look, we need to have the enforcement arm. Whether you yield it, whether you wield it or not is the other question. And we have not, this administration has not taken a really aggressive stand with respect to sheriff sales, because we've tried to work with customers.
All right, and I believe we have Councilmember McCoy. I want to give her a chance to do first round.
Okay, thank you. So I did want to state, because a councilwoman, well, matter of fact, Mr. Chair, he actually stated was this Councilwoman McCoy's legislation, and I haven't even looked at it a little bit because I had to go another route. But I had I had ordinance that was very similar to this, had similar goals, and so Councilman Darby basically and I were seeing the same thing. We were pursuing similar goals about keeping the residents' water bills out of the whole
whole lien foreclosure or the munitions portion of, getting, basically when the city looks to foreclose. We wanted to keep the water bill out of it. So basically what, Brett Taylor stated, that like if it's 13,000 or whatever, and the person owes, 3,000 of it is water, whatever, that would keep them under the threshold. I felt it was important, not only because I wanted to give residents another opportunity to try to salvage it and keep their homes, but also I did not believe that the residents were truly aware and informed, like they weren't educated, that the water will be a lien on their home. I really do believe that a lot of our residents are not educated about the water bill, that sometimes we don't think that because of the fact that we're like no one wants to turn it off, we just won't pay it. And I have to be honest, because I've actually, in my former years, I basically have let water bill go at times here and there, and then I catch up. But no one is basically making us that, they're making us aware that we have to pay this bill, or this bill will be a lien against our home at some point. And we do not want to lose our houses over something as simple as a utility. So what I've done is I've actually stopped dealing with the ordinance. Councilwoman Darby, she did ask me, are you still pursuing this? I'm like, no, did you have another way that you were looking at it? Because I had to go like a different route. So she's pursuing it this way. I'm actually looking at it from a different perspective, because I felt as though that the rules of engagement that Brett had spoke about would be the way that I can get it done without losing any revenue from the city. Because what I feel as though is that we don't want to put that in the munitions when it comes to going to foreclosure. But at the end of the day, if no one ever comes and saves or salvages house, we should still be able to collect on the water, because the water, there was a service provided. So we're kind of like, right now we're like just in a different space at the very, very end goal. But I do I understand and respect why we're trying to keep this from being whatever that calculation that turns into 10,000, keeping it from actually, the water from hitting that calculation to get us to the foreclosure. So I just wanted to make certain that people understood that I was on this ordinance. I've worked it just like I've actually been on this ordinance twice. I've tried to work it 2 times, but every time I tried it, all I kept seeing was the revenue that may be lost and what could, like, the substantial loss that we may get, which would then fall on the people who do pay their water bills regularly. The people that are having an issue with paying their water bills on a regular basis, the ones who are putting it on an auto pay or whatever, like they're carrying right now the toll. So we got to make certain that we are helping those who are having an issue without making it where we're putting the weight on those who are able to pay. So it's like I'm like, so it's been touch and go. I'm still having conversations, and I hope to have a resolution out to you soon, but that's kind of where I'm at. So I just wanted to make certain that I kind of put that information out there to you. I applaud you, Councilman Darby, that you're trying to push this through, but I just could not see how I could have the win-win of helping the residents without making the city have to lose some finances.
All right. And before we get a public comment, this is a question for Director Taylor. From my understanding, the reading of the bill, again, I'm wordsmithing it, it will not prevent the city from actually attaching a subsequent lien on property, even though they could not file foreclosure. So I believe the lien was still attached, correct?
Correct.
Okay. So the lien was still attached. It's not like we're writing off the bill. It just would not trigger foreclosure.
Correct.
Okay, got it. All right, I just wanted to make sure I was correct in my head. All right, we can turn to members of the public. Thank you very much for the public for being patient. It's been a robust discussion, so please feel free to step forward. If you have not spoken already on the water matters, feel free.
Hi, my name is Cheyenne Miller. I am a resident in the 7th District over on the west side. I'm also a Homes Campaign volunteer. And I know some people who have called the city for help when their homes have been threatened to be taken away from them because they could not afford their water bill. And we've had this conversation in 2022, and I know we've asked for specifics on who those people are. And unless they're here to put their business out there, I will not. But I will say this, they've called the city and begged for the city to give them help, and they haven't received it. And I think the question at hand here is not a question of whether we can save on revenue or get more money or what our bond rating is. It continues to come down to the question of, is water a human right? And is housing a human right? And are we willing to take a homeowner's home over an unpaid water bill and put them out of their home for it? And the city is, because 44 is still a high number, regardless of how many of that 44 are owner-occupied homes. So I really hope that everyone here that has a vote will vote yes, right? I really, really hope they do. This is not the time for us to continue to do things that harm the city, that harm residents. There are a lot of residents who are simply falling behind on water bills, not because they don't want to pay it, but because they cannot pay it. I've been in this situation before. I have family members who've been in this situation before. And despite the fact that there are people here who are admitting they don't want to pay their water bill just because they don't, that doesn't mean that that is the case. And people saying that, that is racist. That is a welfare queen stuff. When we say that people are just out here not paying their bills because they don't want to, and the assumption is that when we live in a majority black city, there's some stuff going on there. So we have to be careful how we talk, right, about people not paying their water bill. That statement and stuff about people saying they're not paying their water bill because, oh, they just don't want to, that can really be taken in a way of saying someone is a welfare queen and they're just not paying their bills and they want to live off the system. And so I urge people on this committee to vote yes on this. Again, this is one of those situations where it's a no-brainer. And if you don't vote yes because you care about people, and you don't vote yes because it's a small, minuscule amount of the revenue stream that would be coming in, and it would not stop that revenue stream from coming in, it would just stop you from being able to take their homes for it, then please vote yes because it's 2024, and there's an election this year. So we all care about that, right? So if there's no other reason, vote for that reason, right? 2024 is election this year. That's one reason y'all should vote for it. That's it. Thank you.
Here we go again.
Thank you, Councilman Johnson. I just am here today to give public comment on behalf of the 3 ordinances sponsored by Councilmember Darby. And I urge you all to vote yes on them. 1, stopping shutoffs for vulnerable families, especially those with the elderly, disabled, and young children. Stopping foreclosures for back due water bills, and committing to exploring a way to make water bills more affordable for city residents. I'm a volunteer with the Homes Campaign, and for the last 2 years, we have been knocking on doors across all of your districts, 8th, the 5th, the 3rd, the 4th, the 7th, the 2nd, talking to people who right now are struggling. We're a city of cost burden, we have a cost burden population. People are spending more than half of their incomes on rent, utilities, transportation costs, food, prescription drugs, and it's affecting people's ability to pay. The Homes Campaign also believes that the city should be actively preventing residents from displacement. And high water bills lead to displacement. And so these 3 ordinances are a no-brainer. Water is a human necessity and a human right. And City Council has the power to ensure that the water access is ensured for those who need it. We appreciate what the finance director has to share, but it's not up to him. It's up to the council. So we urge you, City Council, all the members of the Finance and Economic Development Committee to vote yes on these ordinances, because no homeowner should lose their home because simply they cannot afford their water bill. And while the city's water utility assistance fund is helpful, it is not proactively stopping people from falling behind because their bills are unaffordable. And the city should proactively ensure that people don't fall behind on their water bill by creating a more affordable water rate structure. And so, lastly, I just want to say, access to clean and safe water is a basic right, and Banning foreclosures on water bills helps to ensure that individuals and families don't lose this essential resource regardless of their financial situation. Also, foreclosures on homes due to unpaid water bills disproportionately affect low-income households and communities of color. So this is a racial issue. This is a racial issue because the people who are going to be impacted are black and brown people, and they're going to be losing their homes. And so we should be thinking about how do we maintain people's ability to stay in their homes. And this is one way to do that. So thank you, Councilman Darby, for sponsoring this, for the many reasons that have been mentioned in your questioning. And in conclusion, banning foreclosures for back due water bills is not just a matter of financial policy. It's a statement of our societal values, human rights, and the well-being of communities. It helps protect vulnerable people, promotes social equity, and ensures clean water remains a basic right for all residents.
Good evening.
So again, my name's Christian Willauer. I'm also a volunteer with the Combs campaign. I know it's, we've talked a lot, but these are really important issues. And so I wanted to speak on the foreclosures. We have a city that has water bills going up, and people, as water bills go up in a city where there's a lot of low-income people, there's going to be more and more people who can't afford those water bills. So these three pieces of legislation that are proposed tonight really all go hand in hand. It's like, let's look at a program where we can make sure that people don't get behind in their water bills. Like, let's hire some outside expert, like cities around the country, so that we can set up a rate structure that at whatever your income, like, you can afford the water. So that's really important. In terms of not shutting off water for vulnerable families, like, again, it's not a huge number of people. The city of Wilmington, I have the information about how many people actually got their water shut off. And for the year 2022, it was 867 water shutoffs were sent. Almost 200 people had their water shut off, and then 131 of them had the water turned back on, and 65 had their water still off, like when it was reported. So for those 200 people, that's a huge deal, having your water shut off. But for like the whole city of like 36,000 customers, it's like not a very big portion. So I think the point of this legislation is solve the problem for the small number of people who are heavily impacted, like reduce the harm. If there's a senior in that house, if there's a elderly person in that house, if there's a child under 5, like it can have a huge impact. And I know that the city says it has like programs available and stuff like that. But I talk to people, all the time who don't know what the programs are. So there is a communication gap. There's people out there who owe water who don't know what the assistance is. And for them to like face a water shutoff, a lot of the people, who are in this situation are like elderly homeowners. Mm-hmm. Like, if any of you, I just ask, like, has any of us not been in a situation where like we didn't have it all together? Like we were in a crisis, or we like weren't paying attention to our bills. Like, I can't, like, that's all that has to happen for somebody to have their water shut off. So I think that like for vulnerable communities, like vulnerable people, we should just have a policy. Like if there's an old person in the house, a person with a disability, child under 5, you contact the city, like, okay, you're not gonna have your water shut off. I just think it makes 100% sense. It's not gonna bankrupt the city. Second thing around foreclosures, again, for those 5, 10, 15 people over 5 years, it has a huge impact. Mm-hmm. But for the system, it has very little impact. You guys can pass these laws, have like a significant impact on those people and on the surrounding community. Because I do want to mention, like, although there is an issue of like unintended consequences for the water utility, there's also an issue of unintended consequences as a result of foreclosure action. And we had the foreclosure crisis of like 2010, 2012. We know foreclosures like drive down the like value of the houses nearby. They often are sold to landlords. Like basically when you foreclose on a house that owes back to water, if it was a homeowner, you're making the decision to convert that house to either being a vacant property or a rental property. So it just makes sense for a lot of different reasons, both to help the person in the house, the homeowner, but also as a policy, like not to have, like to preserve home ownership. It's basically like a home ownership preservation policy. Lastly, I just think that the city does have different, hope you will ask questions about what the city's policies are around commercial accounts, because if we have a different policy, like a $10,000 threshold for a residential account, but some different threshold for a commercial account, then we just have a whole other issue of fairness and, you know, in terms of like who has the money to pay and stuff like that. Like we have to make sure that we don't have like more serious collection policies for residential customers than we do have for commercial accounts. And the only reason why that comes up is because if you look at how much is owed, 23 million is owed, but 7 million of that is owed by commercial accounts. So I would just encourage you to ask, like, what is the policies around collections for commercial accounts? Thank you. And
Thank you.
please support those 3 pieces of legislation.
Any other members?
Hello. So first off, I'd like to say that I believe that water and housing is a human right. And second of all, I believe that it's the purpose of government to ensure that people can have access to these things. So I do urge you all to vote yes on these 3 ordinances. You know, we've gone back and forth a little bit this evening about how many of these 44 properties are residential versus landlord-owned or commercial or whatnot. But, you know, what this really makes me think is that if there's truly such an issue with our water fund that we're not collecting the money that's owed, you know, it's not the residential owners, it's not the owner-occupied people that are causing the problem. So we should protect those people. It must be landlords and it must be commercial properties. Because if I understand correctly, you have to owe at least $10,000 in order to have these munitions closed upon you. Now, I believe I also heard that the average water bill for a residential property is somewhere between $50 to $100 per month. Am I inaccurate in saying that? Under those conditions, if you do the math, that means that you have to not pay your water bill before a straight 8 to 16 years to meet that record. So that seems like a very small amount of people. But that does mean that there's probably a lot of landlords that own multiple properties where that can add up quickly. And there's also commercial properties that probably utilize water in different ways, so they're gonna rank up quickly. You know, I think we can agree that the average person probably uses the same amount of water as the other average person. I mean, unless we're doing something strange in our home. I mean, we all bathe, cook, do laundry, wash, you know, dishwasher. I think these are the main things. Unless we have some huge like pool or backyard or something that we're doing a lot of water with, I think we're pretty much all on the same page there. So, I mean, in a way, you can look at that as it's a regressive tax on the poor, because the less money I make means that $50 to $100 is much more my income. The wealthier I am, the easier it is to afford that. So we should have something in place like the Affordable Water Fund to make sure that we're getting people situated before they're in arrears. I mean, I work in finance, so I understand bond ratings and stuff like that. Based on the numbers I looked at, I don't think we're at risk of being downgraded anytime soon. I mean, I understand if we have a massive accounts payables that we're not actually pulling in, it can become an issue at some point. But I don't think these people, these residents, are not the ones that are causing that problem. So, you know, I think with the assistance fund to help people that are already in arrears, it kind of doesn't make sense, because if I already owe a big ton of money that I couldn't afford to pay, and I still got to pay my monthly bill that's pretty much the same, how am I, if I couldn't pay the monthly bill before, how am I going to pay the monthly bill plus the payment plan on the arrears? That's why our default rate is so high, because you're just asking people to do a thing that, unfortunately, the math ain't mathin'. You know, the money's just not there. So we should be thinking of different ways to help people afford their water so that they can have that precious human right. Thank you.
Again, we're going back and forth. But the thing about it, we are here speaking on behalf of we want this to go forward. But any of you can imagine how many of us, even though I do know my language very well, can you imagine of that percentages or how many people of those 44 or how many numbers there are Hispanic people that do not know the language? And can you imagine of those people that can feel kind of lost because of the system maybe there, can they don't able to apply or, and the numbers that are being brought up here is, to me there's an answer. Let's vote yes, and we're talking about here back and forth that they're not having the exact number and how many is a landlord, this and that. Today is homeowner. We should just concentrate on the homeowner. Concentrate on that we have a house. Concentrate that we are here and we just want to vote yes forward. If it should not be landlord or these people, people that have a business, I mean, we should all be treated equally, but in a way, a lot of our homeowners, especially in my neighborhood, we are not very low income. I'm disabled, and my husband is a senior, and our water bill has go up. When it was quarterly, it was less. Now that it's monthly, it's more. So people consider that was a nice way to go, but to me, it was not the right way to go. But once that it's already been done, let's just be fair and let's concentrate on the homeowner. And tonight, like they've been mentioning, we just go back and forth to others. But let's just concentrate on the points that have been brought up, stopping the shut up on household, those with elderly, disabled, young children, stop foreclosure for back to water bill, and committing to explore ways to make water bill more affordable. And remember about the people that do not speak the language, that we keep receiving everything in English. And I don't know if anybody in Spanish is listening to this. So all I can say is, vamos a pensar en nuestra comunidad, vamos a pensar en que el agua, el bill del agua es muy alto, y vamos a pensar en nuestra comunidad hispana. What I just said is the 3 points. So let's no apagar las aguas para las personas que son mayores de edad, con disabilidad, con niños menores, no cerrar las puertas a personas que tienen biles que están muy altos, que pueden aplicar para las ayudas, y vamos a trabajar en explorar puntos en las maneras que nosotros podemos trabajar en nuestra comunidad para poder make it more affordable para las personas in general, low income people, disability, elderly, and people with children. Thank you.
I believe we have a Aaron Ray on Zoom.
Yes, hello. It's Kendra McDowell. Sorry, my daughter uses my Zoom for school. I wanted to make public comment in reference to the 3 ordinances that Councilwoman Darby has put forth that I think are amazing ordinances and that will be very beneficial to many communities throughout the city of Wilmington. I'm going to put my business out there, what me and my family is going to, so hopefully it can hit people on a personal level to understand why this is important to pass. Currently, I am trying to save my mother's house. My mother passed away. My siblings moved inside the property, and when they moved in, we found out that my mother wasn't paying any bills, water, taxes, or anything. We called the city. I had my little sister call the city to ask for what can she do because the water bill was up in the thousands. To try to get this fixed, is it possible? Like, we didn't know anything. We're learning as we go. Is it possible to get on a payment arrangement? Is it possible that she can start another account? Being so my mom has passed away and she's a new owner now, and she was told that she could not get on a payment arrangement or anything for the water bill that was owed. We have been going back and forth. Thank you to Darby and Councilwoman Yolanda. We are trying to save my mom's house, which is currently in debt for $10,000 between the water bill and the taxes. We have it's immediately to come up with this money before they put my mother's house up for share sale. Currently, there are 5 children living in the house. One of them will be here next month. When we talk about cutting people's water off, I'm a mother now, and it's very unhumane to cut someone's water off. Currently, I don't go to the store and buy baby water because I can't afford it. So I boil water for my baby's bottles to make formula. So imagine cutting a mother's water off in her home, and she doesn't have money to be able to go out and buy the gallons of water to put water inside for the infant meal. She won't be able to feed her child. Imagine having a 4-year-old, a 5-year-old, a 6-year-old, a 12-year-old, and an 8-year-old in the home, and coming home from school, and they can't take a bath, they can't get a glass of water, they can't do anything. You can't live without water. I don't feel as though that, in my opinion, and as I can see, it's a lot of people who agree with me, that we should be cutting people's water off, especially after going through an era meaning COVID-19, where everybody was struggling and people are still trying to come back from that. I'm just asking that you guys look at this from a personal stance and vote yes on these ordinances. It's important. I'm 35. When my mother bought the house, I thought it was a very good investment, and I'm trying to keep it that way. I want my nieces and nephews to have a home, somewhere that they always can call a home for when they get older, and they can raise their families inside this home. And taking somebody's property for unpaid water is ridiculous. Yes, the balance is supposed to be when you reach 10,000, but let's put it together. My mother, it's between the water bill and the house taxes that is 10,000. So that's the reason that the city is about to put the house up for foreclosure or share sale. It's embarrassing. We have people knocking on the door as far as realtors every day, just showing up to our home, to the house, wanting to buy the house, and they know that it's going to be up for share sale in April. I'm choosing to be the vulnerable one to give you guys a good example, a real example, a personal issue for me. And I cry about this every night. This is the last thing that I have. I'm tearing up now. This is the last thing that I have left of my mother. This is the last thing I have left of my brother. And I would like to keep this in the family, but I don't have $10,000 to just give, just to pull out. I have a home of my own that I have to pay rent for. I'm just asking that you guys really sit down and really think of this and vote yes for these ordinances, because it's important. And they're right. It affects people in the Black and brown communities. I mean, I see it all the time. Now that I am going through this with my mother's house, I run into people all the time for this. And I didn't know anything about this, that the city can take a house or anything. I didn't even know what it took to be a homeowner. But I'm just asking, I'm going to end it off. I'm just asking that you vote yes for these 3 ordinances, because it's very important for the communities and it will benefit the communities. Thank you.
And I believe, thank you very much, Ms. McDole. I believe we have Mr. Stephen N.
Yes, good evening again. Thank you. Yes, I want you to vote, if you will, on these 3 ordinances. I just feel that the city needs to show more compassion and empathy, especially for the downtrodden, the people lower income. At least, work out some kind of a payment plan if they can't pay their bill. And I've never been able to understand, since it's gone monthly, why the price is jacked up so high. Maybe that's something else that can be looked at through these ordinances. And it affects landlords too, good landlords, because when if their tenant can't pay, then it's it's on the landlord, and so it hurts everybody. So I'm just asking you to consider that. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. All right, still have a few more on Zoom. We have Lynn Keelhorn.
Oops, can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Thank you.
You're good.
So yes, Lynn Keelhorn, and I just want to say that I really think we can find ways to reduce harm that some of the water billing practices are causing. We know there are many other cities around the country who have already found really good ways of reducing harm, and the 3 proposals that we're looking at tonight are part of what other cities have found they can do to reduce harm. Specifically, when we talk about wanting to right-size the size of the fees for what people can afford, we want to make sure that we can do that, since water is a basic human need and right. And if we can right-size the fees from the beginning, we don't have to apply Band-Aids on the other end when people can't afford to pay. We'll right-size the bills so they never get behind in their payments. I'm also concerned when we talk about using the fund to help people on the back end, that Band-Aid, because a lot of that has come from one-time ARPA funds. And now that those are essentially used up, how are we going to continue to have enough money to support those who have demonstrated that they need support in order to continue to keep their water turned on? So we know other cities have found a way of doing it without the sky falling. And yes, we need to be thoughtful on the approach. We want to reduce unintended consequences as much as possible. But I want to really emphasize some of the points that Christian made earlier about all the, also the unintended consequences of continuing to do what we're doing. There are extremely negative consequences that are already happening due to the harm that we're causing. And so let's make sure we're looking at the ledger on both sides when we're talking about potential unintended consequences. Thank you.
Thank you. We have Mr. Rogers. Mr. Rogers?
Yes.
Okay.
Good evening. It's T.Y. Rogers. I was a part of one family that had a legacy home, which my grandfather bought. And I didn't even know the year. I don't even know the history of it. But what I know is that the family had the home. The family also lost the home because of a water bill. And my sister fought for years trying to get the house, trying to keep the house. But again, it was sold. It was in sheriff's sale before she could even get the help because she didn't have the funds to keep the family home. I would love to know what we could do to possibly get the home back, because again, the house was paid for free and clear, but the house is in a historic area, which the house had sold and resold. And every time somebody goes in the house, they end up with a legacy home because they have older residents in there, which leave the home. The home is not in bad condition right now, but it was sheriff sold off again. So what is in place to help people with legacy homes that can't get the homes in their name after their loved ones have passed? What helps? What do we have in place to help, restore the homes, for the people that, need the help and can't get things done when the city offers help for the homes to be restored, but they can't do anything because even with the ARPA funds, your name has to be on the documents, which, that's it's just a system that is not built to help, people that don't have the resources or don't have the knowledge of changing those things or having those things in place to help them. So I want to know, what do we have, or who can we go to, or who's helping anyone, with this information. And I think that it's important for us to know and to have that information so that these legacy homes don't end up being an eyesore in our communities. I believe that our ancestors, our grandparents, our parents who have passed away, I don't think that they bought the homes for them to be lost in, a era of, I don't know what do you call this, but for that to be in place to lose a home for a water bill, I think it is just it's inhumane, because it basically put our family out in the street. And I'm talking about, I'm seeing this now, the more that I uncover the things that go on in our city. So thank you.
Thank you. All right. All right, I believe that's all we have for public comment on this agenda item. Oh, sorry. I almost missed you. We have a Mona Byard.
Yes, good evening. Thank you. Other people have spoken much more eloquently than I have. I just would like to add my voice to request for support for these ordinances so that we can search for better ways of balancing all of these interests. I would like to think of my city, Wilmington. I've lived here almost 50 years now, as a humane and responsive place. And so please do support these ordinances. Thank you.
All right, I believe we got everyone. All right, and now jumping back to council for any comments, final comments. Councilmember Bracy.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a couple, actually really one thing, two things. One, we've talked about this quite a bit. It's been referenced quite a bit, and I know that although it's not proactive, it is a good program that we are very proud that we were able to implement the utility assistance program. However.org. It is very concerning when you look at the memo that we received to see that out of 5,000 plus residents that are delinquent, we've only assisted 495. There's still $30,000 of that ARPA fund that was originally the federal fund that created this that we haven't used, and the $250,000 that we appropriated last budget season hasn't even been touched, and we're about to appropriate, or hopefully appropriate, another. So one of the things that I'd love to figure out, and I don't think Director Taylor, you could tell us this right now, but maybe this is a conversation for later. Why? Like, what's going on? Is it a lack of communication? Do people not know that this money is out there, that this assistance, or is it that people are applying and then they're getting denied? Like, it'd be interesting to figure out where the holdup is, because if we have, although this again isn't addressing the bigger issue, this is we want to make sure that this is getting out into the community. If we have it, we should be using it, and if it's something that we as a city, we're not doing a good job of communicating that this is help is there, then I think that's something that we should know, and we should be like thinking about what we need to do to fix that. The other thing that I want to say is that all of this leads into, and it bleeds into a bigger conversation that we really should be having as a city around equity and economic mobility. Because over and over and over again, we have these meetings, we come and we're trying to find solutions to our city's ills, and affordability and the lack of stable employment and jobs and income come up consistently. So even when we think of how we do this, if I can't afford to pay my bills today, even if you made my bills free tomorrow, I still can't afford to pay my bills. So because I'm still not making more money. So I think there's a larger conversation that we need to have in the future about how do we really tackle some of this. And then my last point, or last question to the sponsor is, considering the request that we've made from Director Taylor and the information you're going to send us about what other cities are doing, would you be willing to hold this until the next Finance Committee meeting which would be, actually, we would have to do it before the first budget hearing, which I think is the 25th, if I'm not.
This is the last committee, right?
But then we've done it, we did it last year where we voted on legislation, right?
That's only if it's pertinent information, because then we're in the budget hearing, so the next one will be May, the next official finance committee.
Okay, well, then never.
Go ahead.
Yes.
All right, I have some just final comments. Number one, I've spoken with obviously council members about this matter. And one thing, I did promise Councilmember Darby when she supported the Water Assistance Fund was that we would find a solution to fix the long-term problems with the city. So that's something I've committed to, and I certainly stand behind. So in terms of the foreclosure, that's easy for me. I think it's narrowly tailored. It stops the bleeding. And the assistance fund we put in place to give assistance, but there's many problems even implementing it. So I think the foreclosure is a no-brainer. I'm certainly supportive of it. And again, you're talking about less than 44 households. This is something that we could talk about applying to other parties, but I think it's important. The only question I have for the sponsor is, given the law department's position, questioning whether this is even legal or not, are we potentially looking at options at the state level to help implement this? Because I don't want to pass it and then, it doesn't get implemented because it's potentially illegal based on our authority as under homeroom charter. So I don't want to get into too much of the weeds. That's more for the sponsor. Have you approached the state legislature about potential changes that we need at the state level?
Yeah, so that's been a conversation, and then the second part of the conversation is that it's a legal opinion, and this has been on in conversation way before me, and the administration never made, because the administration made that point to the legal department. It wasn't the legal department that made it to me, because I've been meeting and working with them on this piece of legislation for a while now, and this has also been worked on before me. So it wasn't until the administration stepped in that now all of a sudden they asked the legal department to issue a legal opinion to say that I can't do this. It's an opinion, and I don't think their opinion is correct. So that's another issue, but the state one is being explored, but I don't think their opinion is true.
Okay, thank you. All right. This is any other comments from members of council? If not, sorry, Councilmember Darby, this is your piece, so. You have to
Yeah,
listen.
no, I just have one more question, and then I guess we can ask other questions for anyone else, and then I'll do my closing. But the last question was about the commercial. Is there a threshold before you start before you shut off one now? Is there an amount?
There's no threshold. I mean, we are working from the top down. We're getting the most, the entities, whether they are residential, commercial,
They're all in the same.
we're working on our way down. There is no threshold in terms of shutting them off. A lot of the commercials that are at the top have come in for payment agreements, are sitting in bankruptcy. I mean, there's a whole set of reasons why, there's other alternatives other than payment agreements, People go into bankruptcy. People come in and they pay half. They get into a payment arrangement. We're working our way down. Short answer to your question is there is no threshold.
Okay.
There's no threshold for residential either,
You said there's no threshold for residential?
for commercial or residential, before you can get your water shut off. What we're doing is working our way down to the most,
Oh, I'm
the
talking about
highest,
for
the
foreclosure.
highest debts down. Well, you said shut offs, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, for foreclosures. Sorry if I said shut off.
They are still, again, the $10,000 threshold applies to both.
Okay.
All right, very well. And again, if there's no more questions from council members, Councilmember Darby, are you okay to go to a vote now?
Yes, I just want to reiterate that this is for owner occupants. We have not dealt with rentals. We have not dealt with landlords, which might be a whole nother that we can decide on as a city council on what that looks like. This is owner occupants. We know that there's less than 44 since 2016, 8-9 years ago, of foreclosures that happened in the city of Wilmington that were for water. We know that the threshold is 10,000 for residential or commercial now, and we know that at 10,000, if you have water included or if it's solely water, for $10,000, people are getting their home taken from them, right? So for me, it's a basic human right thing. And then 2, I'm also concerned about revenue, the city thriving, our water fund thriving, but for less than 44 homes since 2016 who are owner occupants, it's enough for me. So I just hope that my colleagues support it. One thing we can do, once it's voted out, it's not like we can't work on it some more. It's not the end of it, but at least this is a part of the budget. As we're talking about the budget, we're talking about water, because we know this is connected to the budget. As we know, we're gonna have to vote and decide if we're gonna increase people's water, which we know the projection is 10% this year, 8% next year. This is a part of the conversation for the budget. So this has to go with it, right? And we can, I'm willing to meet with Councilmember Johnson, Councilmember Bracy, whoever else, Councilmember Fields, Spadola, if there's something else to make this better. When we talk about this, or to even give Councilmember Fields what he needs in regards to what other cities are doing. And I'll also say, even in that, sometimes it's okay to be the first city to do something, right? We always don't need another example. Sometimes we can lead the way, right? We can say, like, this is the right thing to do. But you can get that information, and that's something between now and a city council meeting. We don't have to have it on the next city council with April 4th, the next one. We can give us more time and put it on April, whatever that next date is. We could do that, right? So we don't even have to, we can give people a little bit more time to get the information that they need, or we could just say, we want to be the first to do the right thing. So I'm willing to work with anyone on this, but this has to be a part of the conversation, because we're about to enter in budget session, and we're going to increase people's water bills.
All right, this is an ordinance, so it does need to be formally motioned out of committee to full council for vote. So at this time, I'll entertain a motion to move substitute 1 to ordinance 24-007 out of committee to full council for vote.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All right, so properly moved and seconded. All right, I'm gonna do a roll call vote. Councilmember Bracy,
Yes.
Councilmember Field.
Which one is this?
This is the 24-007.
No.
All right. Councilmember Oliver is excused. Councilmember Spadola. Council President Congo.
Yes.
All right, and my vote is yes. All right. Ordinance 24-007. I believe we have the total vote. So believe looking at the vote count, it has passed.
Yes.
So it will move. Ordinance 24-007 has passed committee. Will be on full council agenda at the next appropriate date. All right, moving down the agenda, the next item is substitute 1 to ordinance 22-033, which is an ordinance to amend chapter 45 of the city code to establish an affordable water program. I think we've talking somewhat at length about this program already. Many members of the public, and I believe Councilmember Darby can address some finer points on this item.
Yeah, so this ordinance is simply to ask the city, the administration, telling them once it passed, that to do an assessment by a certain period of time to establish affordable water program. So we have a water assistance program. That's great, right? We're able to help people when they are delinquent past $1,500. If you're basically a homeowner, great, we can help them. This is how do we catch people from the beginning? We know that 1 of 3 people are delinquent. They cannot afford it for whatever reason. We want to speculate about why they can't pay it. But we know there's a group of people who cannot afford it. There are cities surrounding us who have a water affordability programs. We need to look at what our rates are, what this looks like. So all I am simply asking for is an assessment. So can we do an assessment? So what I have done, I reached out to, and this is an assessment that I would like done from a third party. I'm not interested, honestly, in Black and Beach doing it. They have been with the city for over 10, 15, 17 years, I think it is. I think it's really important that we get a new, fresh pair of eyes who can look at our numbers, look at our system, and say, this is how we establish our affordability water program. Another component of this that I think is really important in looking at this is that it's simply just saying, we need you to propose a affordable water program. I'm not setting one up because I know they sent out a memo to y'all from the administration. I am not setting up a program. I did not come up with what the program is going to look like because they're going to say, it's going to bankrupt us. We can't help it. We can't do this. That is not what I proposed. What I am proposing is simply an assessment. So we know what to do as a council to say this is what we need to do to make water affordable for people. Simple. That is it. That's all I asked for. Everything else that the administration put in there was extra because it's me. But I just want an assessment done. We need affordable water, and that's really it. And I think this has to move along as we talk about our budget hearing. We have our water funding rates that we're going to have to increase, and we have to talk about a water affordability.
All right. Thank you very much, Councilmember Darby. I would like to be added as a co-sponsor of this item, as again talk about the history of what we did with the permanent assistance program. You know, I had, you know, the whole finance committee had a difficult job of guiding the city through ARPA. We wanted to make sure money got to those who needed it, and we all worked day and night to make sure the residents in the city had what they needed. But then when the shutoffs went back on and things started happening, we had to set something up. So I think this is really step 2 of that after the Permanent Assistance Fund, which we implemented last year. And this is, again, a step moving forward and being a just city. So I have no question about this. Councilmember Darby has, to her credit. We've talked extensively about this. I've talked to many folks even in this room about this. This is, again, a no-brainer in terms of how we can get better. It's not implementing the program, but it's an examination of how we can do better as a city. So this one should be fairly easy.
Commissioner Williams.
Okay. All right. And if we can, I believe we do have someone of the administration to speak on this specific item. We have Commissioner Williams on.
Yes, hello, good evening. Thanks for hearing me. I don't know if I'm looking at a different ordinance, but I don't see where it requests an assessment or any sort of review. I just see an implementation of a water affordability program that is incredibly big, that I think that we're actually already meeting, except for subsection C, and meeting those minimum eligibility requirements is just, in my opinion, going to be an entire another level of bureaucracy for the finance department. So you're asking constituents to come forward affirmatively and, telling them to tell us or the finance department that they have to prove their poverty, essentially. And I mean, that's how I read this 2-page piece of legislation. I don't see a request for an assessment anywhere. And then I also had, it does mention the city of Philadelphia, and I would just like to say that I don't think that the city of Philadelphia is a very good example, actually, of an affordability program. It costs the city about $75 million over 3 years to implement the program, which has an $8 million recurring cost every year. So I'm not sure that that's the best model that we would want to implement, because basically the people who have to cover the the millions of dollars that it would cost to implement a program. For more bureaucracy are the ratepayers. The ratepayers are going to have to pay those additional costs incurred for basically naming a couple small groups. I would prefer, not forcing a program that we're not equipped to administrate, and that, we continue working with the finance department in a more flexible manner. So the reason there's only 400 or 500 people who have come forward, that is one of the issues that Philadelphia had, is a very low participation rate, very low. So low, in fact, that they had to go and redo their whole rate process because so few people came forward to be part of the program. So I would prefer, that we continue using the fund that was established by you, Councilman Johnson, and working within those confines, rather than trying to establish, another bureaucratic process, which would not necessarily make any sense. But those are my 2 cents. The administration part is actually covered, is implemented by the finance department, and there's a lot of constraints with respect to what our systems are available to do. If you're looking to do some sort of social program and affirmatively and actively assist customers, then that money should come from the general fund. It shouldn't come out of the water fund, just because it's not necessarily the best idea to have different rates for different people based on whatever criteria you guys are anybody is looking at, right? So in a business, you have to have everybody pay the same amount relative to its cost of service. And then if we want to support a group of people, then that money should not come from the actual water fund, which is supported by all the ratepayers, including a third of which are outside the city. That money should come from, the general fund, to be given to the water fund, to be directly programmed for rate assistance, or personal assistance for individuals.
Thank you very much, Commissioner Williams. Is there anything from Finance Director Taylor on this specific item?
I think Commissioner Williams has articulated what the issues are. Again, this is another issue where you have a subset of customers that are going to. I do want to clarify something. In terms of participation, there are ways of getting people in to participate in these kinds of programs. We have done some digital advertising. I mean, I think the response based on the ARPA money and the CARES Act money and the LIWOP money was actually pretty good relative to, relative to these kinds of programs. However, it is a subset of the 5,900 that you need to get and have them enrolled. As Commissioner Williams says, it's an affirmative. They have to come, they have to opt into the program. You're going to have to figure out and stress test, and I think that we've done that with Black and Beach in terms of stress testing what the cost is going to be. Keep in mind that for every, I believe, $700,000 in revenue that you defer, that equals approximately 1% in terms of a rate increase, or 1% of the rate. So anything that you defer in terms of revenue has to be offset somewhere else. So that's all the comments that I have.
All right. I'll turn it now to council members. Councilmember Darby, I'll circle back to you.
Yeah, so this ordinance amends chapter 45 of the city code to require the Department of Finance to propose an affordable water program. So in that, there has been conversations about Black and Beach doing it through the administration, but they won't call it a real assessment. I don't know why, but they said, we're gonna get Black and Beach to look at it. First, they told me that Black and Beach, so Black and Beach is a contract that the administration has for over 17, 15 years of someone who looks at our water sewer fund, and they kind of give us recommendations on what our water rates should be, what our water sewer fund should look like. So they give a lot of recommendations and have been managing that for over 10 years now. So that's who Black and Beach is. So I asked for Black and Beach to do an assessment. I had this conversation with the administration. They kept telling me, no, it's too expensive, it's too expensive. Knowing me, I'm like, well, show me the numbers. They never showed me the numbers at all. Finally, I get them to, within the last few weeks, to agree that Black and Beach would do an assessment, but it's not really called the assessment, but it's an assessment. They just be saying anything. So then I also, in the meantime, reached out to Raftelis. Raftelis is another company that does assessments to help cities, like the Department of Finance, for you to propose to us what the water utility assistance program should look like. So it's your responsibility, the Department of Finance, to go to these places and do an assessment. It's your job to do that. So you can go to Black and Beach, which I really don't want you to do because they've been working with the city, and why would they go against what they've been proposing for over 10 years now? But to really work with outside agencies like Raftelis for you to figure out and come back to us like this ordinance says, to let us know what a water affordability program would look like and work for the finance department or water department. That's what this is asking for you to go and do the work and do that. And the administration already started that with Black and Beach. I already started that with Raftelis. They already gave us a quote on how much it costs. So if you need the information, I can send everything to you so that you can figure out what this water affordability program is gonna look like by January 1, 2025. So if you need assistance and help in that, that's easy, I got you. I can send you the information to Raftelis so you can set that program up so that there's an affordability program. The water assistance program is not an affordability program. A water assistance program, you have to be delinquent for over 3 months. That does not help people afford the waterability program. So y'all, the administration has, the department heads keep saying this. Because mind you, the administration appoints these department heads. I want y'all to remember that too. So they keep having them say the same rhetoric, the same lines, and it's not true. They just, at this point, just repeating everything the administration says. No, a water affordability program needs to be set up by the Department of Finance, and if you need help, I already have somebody who can help you figure that out.
Any other comments from members of council?
My daughter's birthday, I got to go.
All right, I'll turn it, Councilmember Bracy.
Yeah, just one point of clarification for me. So are we requiring them to set it up, or are we in because if we're doing the assessment, which I support us doing the assessment, the first two pieces of legislation were resolutions for an assessment.
Mm-hmm.
This one is an ordinance, and it's authorizing them to establish.
Mm-hmm.
And then it says that they are, this ordinance amends Chapter 44 to require the Department of Finance to propose. So do we want to not require them, or you're saying we're creating an affordability program and you have 6 months to figure it out?
Yeah, this legislation is kind of standing on business. Like y'all got to set it up. Like at this point, I've been asking for a long time. I've been working with the administration. You could talk to staff. I've been having meeting after meeting. I've been trying to set up meeting with Raftelis. And like at this point, y'all just are not doing the right thing, and y'all are playing games, going back and forth with Black and Beach is going to do it. No, they can't do it. I asked for Black and Beach to come and do a presentation. They told me no, that they can't come to a committee meeting to talk about Black and Beach doing a presentation about an assessment for a water affordability program. So y'all keep playing these games. Why are y'all playing games about something that can help people? Like, I don't care how y'all feel about me, because I know they don't like me. But we're talking about the people here. Well, they don't like me, and they treat me as such. So, and that's fine. I don't care. But at this point, they need to do the right thing, and they're not doing it. They're going to keep playing game. I've been talking about water affordability program since I got on city council. I've been working on this legislation for too long. Like, the city has to do the right thing, and at a certain time, I think as city council, we gotta tell them what they're gonna do. Like, y'all are gonna set up this water affordability program, and if you need, they need help, I got y'all. I already talked to Raftellus. Like, this is like frustrating for me, because it's like, this is simple stuff to help people. Why wouldn't you wanna set up a water affordability program?
Miss,
I'm sorry.
Miss,
Oh my God.
Miss Bass Knight.
Yes, I just want to just elaborate on Councilman Bracy's question as well. Is when it comes to this affordable water program, this ordinance actually is authorized to establish a water affordability water program, and also the Department of Finance shall issue its findings and recommendations to establish the affordable water program by January 1st, 2025. I know that in the synopsis, it uses the word propose, but in the actual codification of the legislation, it mentions is hereby authorized to establish and the water, so I just.
That was my question,
Yeah,
because
so it's not, it shouldn't say propose in the synopsis, but it's the actual codification is to establish.
Like how we established the water assistance program.
Thank you. That was my question.
All right, do we have any comments from members of the public?
Aaron Way.
Okay, we have Keandra McDowell.
Yes, thank you. It's me again. I would like to say, as far as the assistance available for water bills, I didn't hear anything about it until I spoke with Councilwoman Darby and Councilwoman Yolanda. I didn't know anything about it, and I know many people in the community don't know anything about this program as well. And as far as our situation with my mother house goes, we have to pay a certain percentage on the house taxes before we can even get on that program, the water assistance program, to be able to help take the water bill down. So we are not eligible until we come up with $33,265. And then the city said that they would help us with the payment plan. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, now jumping back to chambers.
Hi, my name is Cheyenne. I think it's really concerning to watch the Commissioner for Public Works come on and talk about implementing a program and having concerns about having to qualify people based on some form of whatever eligibility requirements there were, when they already do that with this current program. There's already a bureaucracy set up with the program for utility assistance. And so if there's a concern about the bureaucracy of setting up some type of program as it relates to this ordinance, then where is that concern with the current bureaucracy that exists? And the way that the current program is set up, the actual water assistance program requires for residents to come, just like this would, right? It's required for them to come and apply for that program. So I guess I'm just confused at the administration's concerns here. Is the concern that they have to possibly do an assessment and then implement a program, or are they concerned that they have the bureaucracy of having to determine who would be qualified under whatever that new program would be? If the bureaucracy is an issue, then why is there a water assistance program in the beginning? Right? And why is that a thing? The bureaucracy is already there. You already have to do those qualifications on the current program that's there. So I don't really see that as a fair argument. Second is, the city is costing itself more money when it is requiring that people pay on bills that they cannot afford, and they subsequently either go into some form of debt, and those arrearages pile up and people end up losing their homes. And that is just a long-term issue that the city is just gonna have to ask. Are you more worried about implementing a program or exploring a program that helps people, or are you more worried about making sure that you guys are able to just collect on money that's not there to collect on? And I think that's frustrating to continue to hear
Over and over.
these people say the same stuff over and over about why they don't want to help people. I'm also really concerned that if you're saying you're not equipped to administrate this thing, I don't know if old girl was talking about like public works isn't like public works can't administrate it or finance can't administrate it. I'm a little confused about that part. But if you're not equipped to administrate it, then again, how are you administrating this current program for assistance that also requires people to qualify for it? So I have concerns about the arguments that were put up by the administration today. It's extremely concerning to watch them say that they cannot administrate some program for affordability, but they can administrate a program for utility assistance, when the programs would literally be, one is proactive and one waits for you to fall in the debt. Doesn't make sense.
Any other public comments in chamber? Okay.
I'm sorry, I know it's late, but
problem.
there are a lot of examples of other cities that have put in just these kind of programs. And so as bills go up, some people can't afford it. And what the recognition for many, probably hundreds of systems across the country, if we want to have examples of systems, of other systems, this is where you find them. So, you know, we can't, it's unsustainable to have a city where you have this level of delinquency and to think it's just a problem of you know, we need to have better collections programs. Like, you have to address affordability. So this legislation doesn't say what that program is. I think it's really a great start to say, let's ask for advice. Let's let the finance department, you know, have a role in figuring out how to do this, but let's make a start. So, you know, this legislation could be considered in the context of the overall budget this spring, if you all voted out of committee today. And it gives you a lot of opportunity to figure out the details, you know, with a lot of really good advice from other jurisdictions that have made this happen. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, any other public comments on this item specifically? Okay, all right, I'm gonna turn it back to council now. And again, I know, I appreciate everyone's input, everyone's throughout the evening and over the course of years have talked about this issue. This is, you know, we are up here to solve problems. At the end of the day, we're here to solve tough problems. So this has been a problem, you know, since we set up the Water Assistance Fund, that we knew we were going to have this issue. So I think we don't know all the answers today, but we certainly can explore those answers. So I'll turn it over to the sponsor, Councilmember Darby.
Yeah, kind of the same closing as before. This has to be a part of the budget. We're going to talk about increasing people's water. Last year, we set up a water assistance program. We told them that they were going to set it up, and we allowed the administration to come up with the criteria to what that program looked like. So we are establishing affordable water program, and the finance department can go do an assessment. They can go figure out with Raftellus, Black and Beach, on what an affordability program would look like and have it established by the end of the year to help customers so they don't even fall into the water assistance program. We might need less money now because now we're stopping people right from the beginning. We're being proactive and not reactive, waiting for someone to fall into debt. And it's just so frustrating because it's like you're fighting for me, this is like basic things. And then just the argument you get. But yeah, we can vote on it.
Okay. All right, this is an ordinance, so it does need to be properly voted out of committee to full council for a vote. So at this time, I'll entertain a motion to move ordinance, substitute 1 to ordinance 22-033 out of finance committee to full council for a vote.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All right, it's been properly moved and seconded. All right, I'll do a roll call vote. Councilmember Bracy,
Yes.
Councilmember Field,
Yes.
Councilmember Spadola, Council President Conga,
Yes.
and my vote is yes. So ordinance 22-033 has passed out of committee and will be on full council for a vote.
All right.
Thank you, everyone. And we have one last matter. Councilmember
Yes, one
Darby.
last matter.
So that is substitute 1 to ordinance 23-034, which is to amend chapter 45 of the city code to exempt elderly and disabled residents and children under 5 from water service disconnection. And I don't, I can double check, I don't think we have anyone from the administration in chambers or online. So I guess I will turn it over to Councilmember Darby.
Yeah, so this is the last piece of legislation to address some of our water issues. Of course, there's going to be more conversations, I think, over the budget in regards to the other two pieces we passed, but this can also be a part of that as the budget hearing is approaching and we're talking about water and the impact that it has on families. I know one of our constituents, they spoke and they talked about the amount of water shutoffs that happen and how on paper and the amount of people, it's a little bit, you know, it's not a big amount, but however, the impact for those families means so much versus the impact that it's going to have on the government, right? So I think it's important to protect those vulnerable groups of people. And when we talk about those vulnerable groups of people in this legislation, it's elderly who are on fixed income, disabled people who are on fixed income, and then children under the age of 5. We had one constituent talk about the need for water to feed her child. So as we have this conversation was actually brought up before, just to give a little background. So during COVID, our administration decided to lift the moratorium for water shutoffs. And I was just like, in the middle of COVID? Like, this what we doing while we sitting home on Zoom? So then I proposed the legislation to continue the moratorium, and I didn't have support. So then I was like, yo, we shouldn't do shut off, period. Didn't have support. So then I was like, they can't say no to old people or disabled people or children, right? That didn't work. My legislation did not make it out of committee. So I'm presenting this again along with, because we talk a lot about fiscal impact, right? And I think that's important. Like, we should know how it's going to impact our bottom line, right? In regards to not shutting off water. So, and not shutting off water is not saying don't collect the payment. It's just saying let's do it in a different way. Let's do it in a more humane way where people aren't living without water. And we know what happens when someone lives in a house without water. The house is uninhabitable. Now they have to leave. Now they're unhoused. It costs a society more to deal with families who are unhoused than to try to keep them to be housed, right? When we talk about capacity, resources, time, agencies, organizations, and all of that that has to play into rehousing a family and getting them back on their feet, the cost of us as a city to keep someone in their home does not compare. And as we talk about water as a human right, we should like, definitely during COVID, I do not agree with the administration's decision to cut off water in the middle of COVID. It wasn't even like the federal government didn't even say COVID was over, which we know was really never over, but they didn't even announce it. They shut it off before that. So in that, this ordinance is saying, do not cut off water. That's it. It's not saying don't seek payment. It's not saying don't try to get the payment from them. It's not saying they're not responsible for it. It is simply saying do not cut off their water. That's it. That's all we're asking for. And we know we went from quarterly to monthly. And I remember when we were quarterly, because what I paid quarterly, now I'm paying monthly. But I am at the age where, you know, my income has went up a little bit. I can go do a little Amazon flex, pick up a part-time job. But this population, especially the elder and the disabled, they can't do that. They're on a fixed income. So imagine the impact that it had on them to go from quarterly billing to monthly billing, and what they paid quarterly, now they're paying monthly. And then we're going to increase people's bills 10% this year, 8% next year. And then I remember I asked in the budget hearing last year, when does it end? Oh, we don't know. So this legislation is simply about just don't cut people's water off, and specifically these three groups of people. And as we heard the numbers earlier, and maybe with public comment they can repeat the numbers, but it's not even like it's not a big number. It's not a huge number for us to feel like we're gonna be impacted. The city is going, these things they put in these memos that try to discourage us from really actually being critical thinkers and actually thinking about people. Oh, it's gonna bankrupt the city. It's gonna affect our bond number rating. Like, those things are not true. When you actually look at the number of scare tactics, and they're just repeating what the administration is saying. And that's all I have.
So, Councilmember Darby, thank you for providing this ordinance. I guess I do have some questions, and again, it's for consideration.
Yeah, that's fine.
Have you thought about putting eligible income thresholds in there? Because from what I'm reading, it's not necessarily in there. Because you could have a 65-year-old who is wealthy and just chooses not to pay, or you could have similarly somebody children under 5 who is wealthy and just doesn't pay the city. So how do you approach that problem? Not, and again, because I want to make sure there's an income verification.
Yeah. Now, I definitely see what you're saying, but if they got to the shutoff point, it could just be not paying the bills. Yeah, they could be not paying the bill, but if they got to the shutoff point, if you're a senior and you got to the shutoff point and I don't know. That's something we can explore.
Okay. I just thought, again, the conversations just to help the vulnerable. Because the language seems clear in here, it's not like the water affordability program we had, income poverty thresholds. So maybe there should be a section in this one that adds that, just to make sure they're not people just gaming the system that don't want to pay.
Yeah, that's a conversation I'm willing to have and figure out what you guys. So.
Okay. All right, thank you.
And again, we can move the legislation to not be April 4th, so we have more time as a council to work on it. So whenever the next one is, the 21st or 20, whatever the date is. So this has to be, again, a part of the budget conversation.
Thank you. So I just wanted to know, as a sponsor, would you be supportive of income threshold? So
I am open to the conversation on what that could look like.
Okay.
And working with you guys on that.
All right. Thank you. That was the only one that kind of gave me some questions. All right. Any other questions from members of council? This matter? All right. I'm going to kick it to public comment. Any comments from members of the public? Okay.
So, my name is Cheyenne Miller, and I'm really happy that this legislation is up for vote again. Okay. It's really funny. 2022, this came up for a vote, and not everybody that's on this committee was on there back then, but it failed. It failed the vote in 2022. And I listened to the hearing on Friday last week because I'm a geek. And it was wild listening to people talk about how they were completely fine with shutting off water for the elderly and these little kids and all that. So it's just interesting that we're back here 2 years later, and I would love to see that this could pass. We are in a different spot right now. We're different legislators right now. I think my concern about the proposal for having income requirements is one, it sounds like Public Works and Finance Committee is struggling with income stuff. It sounds like they're struggling with the bureaucracy of having to determine someone's eligibility for these programs. Y'all heard it yourself, straight from Ms. Williams' mouth. So I think it's, if we're concerned about their bureaucracy issues, I don't know, we should be careful about that. And the other thing is, people's incomes are variable and they change, and there are often very little things that these income eligibility programs take into consideration. I think saying that we need to do an income verification creates way more work than the city needs to do. And the truth of the matter is, ain't no rich people out here just not paying their bills and then letting their water get shut off. Like, come on, dog. It is not happening. That's not happening. That's just not happening. Like, rich people are not doing that. And if they're letting their water get shut off, it's because they probably at their second home where the water not shut off, right? Like, come on, let's be honest with ourselves. I don't think that income verification is fair for city residents, especially those who are middle income, like myself, who would not qualify for anything that you guys would put up, but still struggle to pay the $196 water bill that I get every month. Ask me how, I don't know. And I have 2 children that are under the age of 5. So I'm just saying, on a personal note, I personally could benefit from this when I'm struggling to pay my bills, and I make a middle-sized income. So if I can do it, if I am the one who needs it, who's to say that there are not other families who have elderly, who have disabled people, or who have children that are gonna be in need of it? My husband just lost his job. My income changed on a dime just like that 2 weeks ago. And so it's just interesting to me that we're continuing to come around this question of who qualifies and who doesn't. I think we're in an age now where we should be able to trust people. Again, can we please stop assuming the worst about this all-black city, this majority black city? Can we please stop assuming the worst about our residents? We did this during residency. I'm hoping that we cannot do it now. Let's assume that people are doing their best and that people want help when they need help, not because they just don't want to pay their bills.
I just had to say, we're talking about middle income. I'm a low income. I don't qualify for nothing. I don't qualify for even a better health care. So that's not the subject tonight. What I want to say, we are low income. My husband is a retired. He's in Social Security. I'm disabled. And I don't qualify for anything whatsoever. And we're managing to pay our water bill. And we're managing to pay our mortgage, and we manage everything else that you know. I don't come to the point right now. What I wanted to say is we're going back and forth, and we wanted to agree. This is a problem that has been going for a while. This is not new. We should have an answer by now. We should have an answer when it was first proposed. And what I wanted to say is we should go for it when it comes to budgets. And when it comes to, we go back to the low income, we go back to the people with over elderly, we go back with people with children, we go back with people with disability. But overall, it affects other people that are not in this 3, elderly, disability, or children. It also affects people that, like what she mentioned, that her husband lost her job. And even though she's in the middle class, but still her budget is going to be cut up in half because her husband doesn't bring an income. So imagine people with low income that we only make a very few dollars and we don't qualify for nothing. I'm telling you, I don't get nothing. We are making it with our low income, with Social Security. We are trying to make it. And I'm not here for myself. I'm here for my neighbors. They're both 83 years old. Their water bill is twice as mine. I cannot understand why I live in 204, my neighbor lives in 200, 2 elderly people in the 80, paying over $20 or $30 more a month than me. So this is what I'm thinking is not fair. I'm not saying I should pay like them or they should pay like me, but there are 2 elderly people hardly spend no water whatsoever, and they can hardly pay the water bill. Their water bill is almost $70 a month, and mine is around $50. So what I wanted to say is, I'm not here always speaking about me. I always trying to advocate for the disability, for the elderly, and for the people with family under children 5 years old. So please think about it. Don't think of middle class only, but think about people with disability, elderly, people with children, but also people that have lost their job. We don't know about tomorrow if, God forbid, any of us here lost their job, whoever is working. Think about it. If you here that have a job, we lose your job. I hope not. But think about it, your budget will be cut in half. So any bill that we pay will be a hardship. We will not have money to pay the bill. So that's all I had to say. Just think about it. Thank you for your time. I appreciate every one of you that has stayed to the end. Others had just disappeared and left, and we don't know why they have left, if they have been excused.
it's late. I don't want to echo the sentiments of everyone else. I just know in 2022, the Finance Committee voted no on protecting vulnerable families from water shutoffs. I want to thank Councilman Nathan Field from the 8th District for voting yes last time to protect vulnerable families, and I hope you can consider voting yes this time around for all the reasons that Ms. Lord has mentioned.
Next speaker.
Council Committee President and council members, thanks again, for everybody's attention to these important issues. I would just say that you will have time to work out, whether or not there's an income requirement. Just as somebody who is thinking about like administering the program, you want to have it so that it's not that hard to qualify, right? So that somebody who is facing a water shutoff, who has a child under 5, can make a phone call and like not have their water shut off. The goal of this legislation is to alleviate hardship. And I do agree that, paying the water bill, like if you have money to pay the water bill, you will pay the water bill. And if you don't have money to pay the water bill to the point where the water bill gets shut off, like you're having a problem paying the water bill. So I wouldn't try to make this legislation like really difficult to access. I think it should be more like, for these populations, we're going to make sure that they don't get their water shut off, because it's a special hardship for these vulnerable people, for this vulnerable population. So anyway, I really thank everybody for working on all this legislation and for thinking about it so much tonight. And I hope you'll vote this legislation out of committee tonight. Thank you.
Any other? Marshall, do we have anybody online? Oh, we have Keandra McDowell.
Yes, thank you once again for allowing me to speak. I would like to say thank you to Councilman Nathan Fields for voting yes on this in 2022, and shame on whoever did not vote yes for this on 2022. As far as the income verification, I believe that we have no longer a middle class. It's either poor or rich. I believe that there shouldn't be an income verification. Just like Ms. Cheyenne said, rich people aren't going to be coming and asking for help. The people that are going to be coming and asking for help is the people that need it. I want to take you back to my comment that I stated earlier. I don't buy baby water from the grocery store because it's just taxed on an extra dollar amount to my monthly income. So I boil water to make my baby's bottles. I believe that water should not be turned off or disconnected. When you start talking about cutting off people's water, just like Councilwoman Darby said, then DIFAS gets involved. People are getting their kids taken away and more stuff like this. This is not a difficult ordinance. Just please vote yes for this. It's common sense. There shouldn't be anything to make someone not be eligible to get help if needed. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. Marshall, Cheryl Robinson. Cheryl?
Hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yes, I agree with everything, and I want to thank everyone on the panel, and I want to thank Mrs. Darby for inviting me. And I notice everyone is talking about the bill, paying the bill. I agree with all of that, but I don't think it's fair that someone should lose their property also. So that's my main concern, is losing their property over a water bill. And that's all I had to say, and I thank you for allowing me to speak.
now going to turn it back to council. Thank you very much, members of the public, for taking part. And again, I posed this question to Councilmember Darby because I'm trying to recall. I have to review my notes from 2022, but I believe, did we get the same response from administration about the problems of implementing the program? Was that the response we received?
Yep.
Okay, because again, I have to review the tape, and I recall now briefly about that. And I guess, are we going to have those same serious concerns, or them saying that they can't even get people in the program?
Yeah, and they're gonna say, oh, by not having this enforcement mechanism, we're gonna lose money. So they're gonna say it's a fiscal thing too. That's what they say each time.
All right. And I know we don't have anyone from the administration here, but those are some answers. Ms. Bassnight, if we could have their official response to that. I do see the memo highlighted, but that was more about affordability program. It wasn't about this specifically. So I want to know if the implementation has changed from then to now. Because I recall the compromise you had made was setting up the Permanent Assistance Fund. And that was one of the moves we made. So again, I have to go back in my notes, but I think that's how we pivoted to that. Okay. All right, and guess my only final comment, Councilmember Darby, again, I had to reread it. Frankly, I hadn't seen it in a while, and I was kind of overthinking what it was. So the bill continues to accrue if the person has a bill, whether affordable or not. It's just that they can't do the water shutoff.
Correct.
Okay.
Yep.
I was thinking it was an exemption out of
You still gotta pay your bill.
Okay. And it would go in conjunction with the other pieces.
Yeah.
So it wouldn't be like preventing other pieces from taking effect. So if someone still has a bill that's affordable, they can pay, then they would continue to pay that.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. That clears it up for me. All right. I have no further questions. Any other council members have questions on this piece? All right, Councilmember Darby, you have the last word.
Nothing really. Let's do the vote.
All right, well, this is an ordinance, so it does need to be formally voted out of committee to full council for a vote. At this time, I'll entertain a motion to move substitute number 1 to ordinance 23-034 out of committee to full council for a vote. Is there a second? First, is it a motion?
So moved.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
All right, so properly moved and seconded. All right, this time I'll take a roll call vote. Councilmember Bracy,
Yes.
Councilmember Field,
Yes.
Councilmember Spadola, Council President,
Yes.
and my vote would be yes. So this matter will move to the full council agenda, and a date to be announced in the future. Again, thank you everyone for taking part tonight. Tonight is exactly what we're supposed to do in Wilmington. Some people complain about our long meeting times, but for us, it's about engaging the public, and as long as the public's here, we're here to serve. So we appreciate everyone being present, both in person or online. And we look forward to more input as we talk about these important matters as we approach budget season. So our schedule will be a little bit different for April and May because we are in budget season. The mayor's budget address is coming up. I believe it's on the 24th, Marshall? 21st?
Let me make sure.
It is the 22nd, the 21st.
21st.
The mayor's budget address is on the 21st, so that will be a chance for you all to come visit us in chambers if you would like. It will be an occasion where we'll find out the mayor's budget address. It's sort of the way it goes is an overview. City council does not make the budget. The mayor proposes a budget, and we tell him what we want, and we represent the people. So we appreciate everyone taking part in this, and we look forward to seeing you in the budget hearings. And we'll have the full budget schedule, which starts in April. We'll have that outlined on WITN. Also, it will be on the city council website as well. All right, and at this time, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. All right, properly moved and seconded. All those in favor? All right, see everyone.